Especially this one, man. This is the one we've been waiting for.
I know. Yeah, I've had internet issues. My internet went out last night for the third time in a week.
You reset the
Yikes.
box?
Yeah, I had to.
Okay, is it working now?
It is now.
Not in
Not in there.
Not in my room. Our room.
I gotta log back in.
Oh! Time to drink.
I'm sorry.
Happy wife, happy life.
Happy wife, happy life. So I'll enter us in, and then I guess we'll have a nice big group cheers with the audience and get on the way with shooting the shit, boys. I think that sounds like the routine.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey guys, welcome to the 66th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and other co-hosts in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics, whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations. We hit it all. But of course, this week we're going a little bit outside the lines, shooting the shit, having a couple drinks, and just having a good time with you guys. I have my Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips Reckless coaster for this occasion, sitting beneath my glass of bourbon. Before we cheers with everybody in the audience, of course, I want to introduce my marvelous co-hosts. Of course, my regular partner in crime, the Canadian Caped Crusader himself, over to my, what would that be? My internet left. Yeah. Comic Boom, man. What's going on, bro?
It's good to be here, man. I'm glad. Like I said, I'm glad the week's over. I'm actually quite happy this week. I'm also happy politically for my American friends, and I probably will piss off 50% of the people watching by saying that. But I think life's going to get better, and here's to a better 2021.
Here's to a better 2021, gentlemen. And of course, we have two other great gentlemen joining us down below. If we're going, I guess that would be clockwise internet. I don't know. Directions are a thing. Of course, Jace, you joined us, 2 weeks ago? You can also find Comic Boom and I rambling a little bit over on Jace's podcast as well. But the one and only host of the Comic Source podcast, my friend Jace. What's up, man?
Not much, man. I share Boom's sentiments, to better days, getting this pandemic under control, and new president. It was kind of humorous. I take everything with a grain of salt. Obviously, there's still a big mess to clean up, but seeing some of the tin foil hat people that were literally expecting the power to go out and martial law and blackout for months and months. They were buying up ham radios and God knows what else, and they're watching this new president be sworn in, and they're like, I thought the storm was coming. And then to see the fallout on that, like I was following a newspaper reporter from NBC, so maybe a not a newspaper but a network reporter, Brett Collins, I think his name is, and he was showing these screenshots from these forums that these people frequent, and they were just like losing their minds. The funniest one I saw was one guy. He put a post up saying, "To all law enforcement and federal agents reading this forum, everything I've posted for the last 4 years is all satire. I didn't mean any of it. I was just kidding." That made my day. I mean, what more can you say right there?
That's fair enough. While we're waiting for our fourth co-host to iron out, perhaps speak of the devil. Who knows? Will he make his triumphant reappearance? Well, while his screen is loading here, we'll just say hello to everybody that decided to join us and burn a couple of hours, burn the midnight oils, as they say.
Yep.
Tehilum29 saying, "Good to see you, Dark Knight." It's good to see you too, buddy. Thank you for joining us. He has arrived.
Jesus Christ! It keeps disconnecting, like it keeps throwing connected without internet on my thing. I swear to God, dude. I swear to God, everybody. The internet here in Japan fucking sucks.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we'll take what time we can get of you, Joe. Of course, just below me, it is a face you probably haven't seen on the channel in a little while. He's been busy moving all the way across the globe. My friend and yours, Joe from Joe's Geek Show, buddy. It is good to see you there, and it is good to see you with a drink in your hand even more. So, I look.
Oh hell yeah! I do this one day a year, and boy, do I like to go all out. Let me tell you, this is going to be a fun time because, I mean, just the list of questions that we've come up with today are questions that were kind of inspired by two bits of things. Obviously, some conversations that happened in the movie Mallrats was a big inspiration for a lot of these questions, of course. And if you've seen Mallrats, you know exactly which conversations that I'm talking about. Secondly, you know, of course, because of conversation with, you know, other comic book friends of mine, where we just like wonder all these different things about superheroes and like how their power relates to certain physical attributes and stuff like that. I'm just, you know, I'm really excited to finally actually like talk about some of these things, and you know, and I think it's gonna be a good time. So I want to say, you know, thank you for having me. It's been a hell of a long time since we've gotten on to any kind of chat whatsoever. So I'm just like super excited, you know, and it's good to see Boom again and whatnot. And Jace, I don't believe we have had the pleasure actually of ever streaming together. So it's good to see you and good to meet you. Let's get it on.
All right. Speaking of get it on, gentlemen, both in the direct video vicinity and in the chat, I propose a cheers to comic books, to friends, and to 2021, I suppose. Yeah.
Definitely.
Here.
Yes.
Boom.
The nectar of the gods. Okay. Getting into some of these live chats real quick. We got the one and only Mark McKeever saying he dropped Future State, lack of proven talent and exorbitant price points for the issues. Yeah. You know, we could go into great detail, or I could just point you a link in the description. Boom and I have sat down with Jace and one of his regular collaborators on his podcast every week to chat Future State, and we go book by book. So if you want like a full breakdown of our thoughts, link in the description below, Comic Source Podcast. Go check out all of the gentlemen here, by the way.
And he also does a lot of great interviews too. A lot of great interviews, Jace.
Yeah, those Future State episodes come out Future State Friday, and we do the previous week, so you have 10 days to read them, so no spoilers. But Mark, yeah, if you've dropped them and you're curious, if you're missing anything, most likely you won't. But yeah, we go in depth, so give it a listen. You'll know if there's something you should go back and pick up.
Right. And if you like Ranty Trev, you'll get some Ranty Trev. I promise you that, my friend. Of course, he also says, take your shots, boys. We will. We're sipping the classy stuff, my friend. We also have Taylor Pector just saying, hey, what's up? The one and only Aaron VO saying, howdy ho, boys. Howdy ho to you indeed, my friend. Welcome, welcome. And let's see any new joiners. Silver Batman Rangers, big cheers to the group. Cheers to you, my friend. So, okay, I was just hearing some repeat. I don't know if somebody has the stream on the side somewhere. I'm getting a little bit of reverberation.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
Cheers.
Does somebody have the stream playing off to the side?
I think it might be some lag time on Joey's part there, Joe. I don't know. We're picking up. I think we can hear the YouTube on your end.
Huh. Oh well. We'll make it through. We'll survive, gentlemen. So I guess we could just break the ice with one of these questions. Joe, do you want to propose one of the wonderful, thoughtful questions we've generated for this evening? No.
How long is that lag time?
Joe.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes.
Did you hear
Yes.
anything we just said?
Baby.
The lag time is real. I was just going to ask if you wanted to present one of the questions that we had set up for this evening.
No. Okay. Present one of the questions. I can do that. I think I'm cutting you off. I'm not sure what the lag time is here. But yes. We can present one of the questions. Yes. So let's start. Let me go through them real quick and find them. Let's start with the top of the list, right? Given the time frame that Steve Rogers came from, right?
Give the time frame.
His shield would be a suitable kind of thing.
Yeah, you got cut off like a motherfucker.
Maybe we're just drunk.
Oh no, Joe. Why have you left us so soon?
Is he the only one who has the questions?
So I think I have some form of them, and I think I know the question he's referring to. One of them was basically, okay, so does Captain America go into the sack with his shield and find it a suitable form of protection?
Is it like Linus's blanket in Charlie Brown? Does he need his shield with him at all times? Does he have to take it with him wherever he goes? That's the question. Does Captain America need a shield? That's what we're posing the question you tried to read, Joey.
Right.
Here's the thing about Cap. Especially considering the time, like, Joe mentioned, the time he came from, a more innocent time, a big deal if a girl showed her ankles and that kind of thing. I have a hard time even imagining Captain America having anything in his bed with him other than the shield. He doesn't really seem like the kind of guy to get down, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I don't see him that way. And not that I've read every Captain America comic out there, but he's not one that usually, even when he has a love interest, like, Diamondback or Sharon Carter or Peggy Carter, or I can't really think of anybody else he's dated. I guess there was Bernie Rosenthal in the mid 80s. It's always a very proper courtship, So I don't know.
That's fair.
About it, I guess, as opposed to others, Spider-Man or even Superman, they're married. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah, I think he's just gonna go bulldozing into the sack, like shield first, man. Like, what other options does he have? You gotta protect yourself. Like, especially back then, you look at the standards. You're not married. There's a lot of social stigma around that, and so if you're gonna do it, and you're Captain America, what better protection than a vibranium shield? You know what I mean?
I agree, and I think Captain America, he's the type of guy. He's the guy. That famous line he says.
That's not for you, sweetie.
When he says that I can do this all night. I mean, he wasn't just talking about fighting. I mean, he can go all night. I mean, with or without the shield. I mean, there's no question. I don't care what anybody says. When you're hanging out with men for 5 years fighting in a war, I mean, the guy probably got around. He had his fair share of some pinup girls during World War II. He had to have some action. This whole goody two shoes.
Yeah,
I don't believe it.
So, Joe, what do you got to say about that? What do you think about Cap and his suitable Wakandan protection? Oh boy, Joe.
Yeah.
Are you laughing because it was funny, or are you laughing at the lag?
I'm laughing at both because I'm barely hearing you guys.
I thought the Japanese were
also,
good
I think
electronic.
Apparently, their internet disagrees with that sentiment.
Tragedy.
As to your question, what do I think about Captain America and his Wakandan protection? I think Wolverine can scratch it.
He's like one Mike's hard in.
Don't. No, I took a couple shots of whiskey too prior.
Jeez, you're drunk already.
He pre-gamed a little too hard.
But I don't think that Cap Shield would protect him from child support.
Oh, God, that was heavy. Shit.
Yeah, he doesn't get paid though. Does he ever get paid? Does the government pay Captain America? He does everything for free. So his income's low, so his child support's low too. That's not a big
I don't know. I mean, he was frozen. He was frozen for how many years? I mean, you got to think the government owes him some back pay for being frozen.
Yeah, 100%. He was still.
I mean, I think there's been a question that's even been posed: could Cap technically be a millionaire with all the back pay that he must have gotten from the government?
Plus, they probably subsidize his housing, right? I mean, they probably provide like government housing to Captain America.
It's possible. We know he's got the VA for healthcare, right?
That's fair.
Did Tony Stark pay the Avengers a salary at one point? I could swear that thing.
He may have.
I feel like it was. It was.
That's why Captain America was so torn in the original Civil War. I think Tony Stark paid him more than the government did, and so, like, which side do I go on? Which side pays me more? That was really the real issue, but they had to change the plot because that wasn't as exciting.
Wait, the original for the North or the South?
What's that?
I said, you said the original Civil War. I'm like, did he fight for the North? Or the South?
Yeah, that's right.
He was a Yankee, right? He must have fought for the Northern States.
Hey, that would be a good plot line. They should do that. They should do that on another Earth somewhere in the multiverse. Like the actual Civil War. Whose side would be who?
Might be too on the nose.
Yeah, might be a little bit too on the nose.
Yeah, Tony Stark there with his
I
Rory Williams.
I can see some interesting stuff coming out of that, though. To be honest, it's like, hey, one side's the North, one side's the South, and in the middle is the Mason-Dixon line.
That's fair. We did actually get an audience question back here from Taylor Pector regarding the new DC Universe Infinite. Have you guys checked out the updated library of the DC Universe Infinite? They've added some older Vertigo and Wildstorm stuff. I'm currently reading through Ex Machina. I think I still have a month left of my year subscription to DC Universe. Mind you, I think my re-up to that service was a total mistake because I barely used it. And when I did try to use it on my Fire Stick TV, it did not go so well all the time. So no, I haven't taken a look at it, but aren't they charging the same amount of money for just comics that they were for the comics and the TV?
I don't think so. How much? Okay, so I got it at San Diego Comic-Con the year that it was coming out. I think it was coming out in the fall, right? And if you bought and paid for a year at San Diego Comic-Con, they gave you 14 months for the price of 12 months. So that's what I did when it first launched. And then I swear I logged into it 4 times because what am I really going to do? I don't watch TV shows really. And most of the comics that were on there I had read because they started with a lot of old stuff. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then when it came time to auto renew, I was like, well, I didn't log into it except for 4 times the first month. So I let it lapse. So I don't remember, but wasn't it 14? I want to say 12 or $14.99 a month.
I don't think it went over $10.
Well, it's $7.99 now. I don't know. I can't say what it was before, but my understanding is they added a ton of stuff. I think it has value. I do. I mean, I think it's comparable in price to the Marvel Unlimited. That's $6.99 or $7.99. So if that's what you want to, if that's the way you want to do your comics, I don't see a problem with it. It sounds like they're going to start following that Marvel Unlimited model, and it in a monthly fee, and the books are there 4 months or 6 months after they come out. You're saving a hell of a lot of money versus buying them off the stands. I mean, at $7.99, 2 monthly books basically pay for the subscription for a month, right?
Yeah.
Or 1 issue of the next Batman. You skip an issue of the next Batman and pay for a whole month of DC Unlimited. So I think it's a good value. So
that's fair. What about the 2 guys that can't use DC Universe because you're not in America?
Well, what do I think of it? Well, obviously, I don't get the benefit of it, so I got to do it the old-fashioned way, either piracy or other means or overspending.
But they're trying to get it international. Is Marvel Unlimited international?
No.
That's
actually, I do have a Marvel Unlimited account, and I actually rack up a lot of points because I actually do have a lot of my comics through that. But my points are in it. I can't cash in my points because I'm Canadian, so I actually have 300,000 like Marvel Infinite points or whatever they call it, but I can't cash them in because they won't let me because I'm Canadian. It's actually I'm hoping that when they switch over that they'll grandfather me in, but we'll have to wait and see.
Can
I can
you?
always sue the bastards.
I've never used Marvel Unlimited because it goes back to the same thing. I own so many of the comics physically that I don't need the digital copies.
Yeah, I don't either. It's just the principle of the thing. If I have it for, I never pass up something that basically comes free with the comic.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
whatever.
Is there a website for?
Yeah, well, it was. They actually merged it when Disney bought Marvel. I think they've merged with Comixology now. They actually merged with Amazon, the Marvel Unlimited. It's merged now, but you still have points and you can still redeem points if you're American.
Gotcha.
I don't think they're merged because I have I mean you can
Well, their sites are. I mean, what they did was that they sent me a notice about 6 months ago saying that they were gonna. I never lost anything, but they merged. Now, when I go to Comixology, there's a merging with my Marvel Unlimited for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't.
I do remember reading something about that. The only reason I ask is because if you have a VPN service, which I, as an IT professional,
I do have that. I do have a VPN, and I could cheat, but I've not done that yet. I could.
Yeah, you basically just tell the whatever service, yeah, I'm actually in Los Angeles or San Francisco or wherever, some U.S. city, and go in that way.
Yeah.
Not that I condone that.
Yeah, no, I got a VPN to try it for the Wonder Woman movie. Actually, is when I did that, and I ended up that's how stupid I am. I ended up getting the VPN for whatever it is, $15 Canadian a month, and in frustration because HBO Max was overloaded with the Wonder Woman movie, I paid $30. I said, screw it. I paid $30 to actually rent Wonder Woman for 48 hours on my cable network channel, and I watched the movie 3 times. And then I gave it a good review, a bad review, and a mediocre review. So I don't know. I got my money's worth. Let's put it that way.
Jeez, you sound like my high school ex-girlfriend. Make up your mind, guy.
I know. It's like, help me.
That movie for me, I watched it once. I watched it with my wife and my daughter and my son. We watched it on Christmas Eve, Christmas night, and I'm glad we did, and I'm glad I watched it with them because seeing my wife and daughter enjoy it gave me more pleasure, and I enjoyed it then. But the more I think about it, and people have asked me about it, and I think back on it, the worse it gets.
Well, yeah, exactly. Do you guys find that? Like, I find that too with a lot of movies. Sometimes the biggest mistake I can make is doing a review too quickly. There's something about processing it because, and I experienced that with The Last Jedi. I gave it a mediocre review. The more I watched it, the more I hated it. With Wonder Woman, I could understand why people liked it. The impact, third act, affected me. I liked it. But then it does matter who you watch the movie with. It matters if you watch it with family that aren't big Wonder Woman fans but love the movie. But if I watch it with comic book guys, we're gonna dissect it and we're gonna look at it through very different set of eyes. And it's just one of those things. And so I'm just more critical when I look through it through comic book eyes than I am if I'm just a guy eating popcorn, shooting shit with my wife, watching it. You know what I mean? You sort of let the brain relax a little bit. Plus, I'm an alcoholic.
See, I watched it in a fit of procrastination really late at night, and I think I was like live tweeting reactions in a thread to it, and I think almost all of them were just horrible. I was just like, oh god, that movie was bad. I think it's a competitor for like the worst DCEU movie so far, which is like, wow, considering Wonder Woman was like the best DCEU movie so far. So that disparity is shocking. I think what actually hurt me on an emotional level was that like Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns probably had more creative control over this one, and we were bitching about the studio getting too hands-on with the DC films, and now that they got all the room they wanted, they made like one of the worst movies I've seen in theaters next to like Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, it had plot problems. I thought that some of the acting was absolutely atrocious, like cringeworthy. And then parts of the story like literally directly contradicted things that were said in the first movie. So I heard somebody say, well, if it had been edited better, I'm like, no, there's no amount of editing that could have saved this movie unless you edit out every scene Maxwell Lord is in, maybe.
Yeah. No, the best lessons can be learned. And I've said this before, and well, many people have said it, and it's because it's so obvious. I mean, when you're dealing with a large universe of superheroes that already have an established universe, like Star Wars is a good example. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Stick to legacy. Stick to what works. Have an overall producer. I don't care what anybody says. Walter Hamada for Warner Brothers. He's not exactly a Kevin Feige, but you need to have more of a unified vision. I'm leaning more and more to abandon this directors with their own vision horse shit. No, have one universe, one continuity, and if they don't toe the line, fire their asses, lay it down, and get people in there. And the Marvel Cinematic Universe has it right. And when something is that good, you copy it. Swallow your goddamn pride and copy it. Get your head out of your ass. Copy success and be successful.
So, but then would you have the DC universe just be a mirror image of the Marvel universe?
Well, no, it wouldn't be. Well, okay. It would not be a mirror image. It's different heroes, different legacies, different histories. I'm just saying that there would be some inherent consistency. None of this infighting or backfighting that you're hearing about, different visions for this character. I mean, come on, to me, there's this is what meetings are about. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's pretty bad when three guys on a YouTube channel, or, all of us in a comic book YouTube community, even those of us that are the most diverse and apart, we could probably come up with a better unified vision of a DC cinematic world than what's being pumped out right now. And, let's just be blunt. DC universe, whenever there's a good movie in DC, in my view, it's kind of like they kind of get lucky. Yeah, great. Aquaman is good. Sure. Shazam is good. Sure. But they're wildly disparate movies, and trying to connect them, so why connect them if they make money? Well, guess what? I mean, I figure you should go big or go home, $600 million, $700 million for Shazam or whatever. What? That's not good enough. This is the big boys. You want to bark with the dogs, fine. But if you can't bark with the dogs, get off the porch.
I get that, but I'll take you and forward you Joker. Ridiculously low box office. Ridiculously low budget, massive box office success. Financially, if you look at cost comparison versus net profit, it's more financially successful to the studio than Endgame was, or any Marvel cinematic film was for Marvel. So in that argument, do you not maybe just make a couple art house films with some DC Comics characters and let Martin Scorsese cinematize comic book movies and let that go?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chase.
Yeah, I can see it working. I mean, the thing is, they want to do this for the long haul, and trying to catch lightning in a bottle with Joker again, I think that's a proposition that's a lot more fraught with risk than just saying, okay, let's copy the Marvel model. And I don't think it's a mirror image, because here's the thing: once you got a couple of movies into Marvel, you're talking about Feige running things, and even though the movies are their own unique thing, it has a throughput in two ways. It has a throughput in tone, and it has a throughput with building up to this cosmic story of the Infinity Gems. I'm sorry, I'm not going to call them stones. The Infinity Gems, right? So yeah, don't copy that. Don't go dark side. In my mind, I think something that would really work for the DC universe when you talk about throughput, build on a mystery, build on something magical, something sort of legacy. And that even allows you to go a way that a lot of DC like to go, apparently, which is to go a little darker, lean into the mystery of the DC universe. The idea of, hey, go all the way back to the Golden Age when they're called mystery men. And you can build something that way that then culminates in some big magical fight with, I don't know, Madame Xanadu or John Constantine, or, Swamp Thing with the Parliament of Trees, or Felix Faust, something like that, where you're not copying, you're not going cosmic, you're not going space, but you're still building something epic. That's what they need. They need to, if they want these to be connected and they want to build something that generates billions of dollars. And I mean, here's the other thing about it, right? You're 100% right, Trevor, to say percentage-wise, Joker was way more successful than any of the Marvel movies in terms of box office. But think about all the other money Marvel has made, Disney has made, because now these properties are household names in terms of licensing, toys, merchandise, shirts, tie-ins with, food and, Disney Plus. There's all kinds of people that are subscribing to Disney Plus because you have, WandaVision and the Loki show and what have you. So it's more than just looking at the box office and measuring the yardstick. You're talking about building an empire, think about it. 20, 30 years ago, Marvel as a property, as a whole entity, all their heroes, all their characters, is nowhere near as valuable.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Joe, what do you feel about that? What's how do you fix the DC cinematic universe? What are you going to do to set it straight?
To set it straight, well, at first, Jason had a pretty good way of going about it. The first thing to do is, you got to have a plan. And they did have a plan in the beginning, but obviously it didn't work out too well in terms of like Snyder's vision as a whole. And then even so, from the beginning, it's like it was really clear that they were willing to deviate almost immediately from whatever the initial plan was in terms of having it all dark and stuff like that. Like, I think we really saw that with Suicide Squad and whatnot. So I think first, having sort of like a multi-scale plan, probably even bigger a bit than what Snyder possibly may have had planned would have helped. As we saw with, Marvel and stuff like that, it was essentially a 10-year story arc, more or less, leading all the way up to Avengers Endgame. And that's something I wish we could have seen on the DC side, something that we saw inklings of, something that wasn't just going to potentially end with like, maybe a Justice League 2-parter that would have happened in a couple of years. I think that's that's pretty much like the bigger thing is just, having a more consistent idea about what you want out of your universe and stuff, and then pick that story, at least that one story that your audience would resonate with, and just kind of springboard off that if you're able.
I would add to that let's use the Joker movie as an example. The sad part about the Joker movie is that if you're going to take a chance like that, is that just think how much better that could have been, that there was no Easter eggs in the Joker movie, almost no Easter eggs at all. It had some interesting points. It took a couple of pot shots against Thomas Wayne. Obviously, Bruce Wayne was in it at the end. It ended by showing the allusion into the Wayne legacy. But if DC is hell bent on continuing to do very disparate, different versions of the characters and not link the universes, still put the Easter eggs in there, so that if you do happen to hit $1 billion success like the Joker, you can dovetail off of it. Because now, frankly, just think of how interesting it would be to follow a young Bruce Wayne as a sequel to the Joker movie. That would be kind of interesting because you have that new new insight. But there's no game plan because they didn't even think it would be successful. And let's not forget, I'm an outlier on this, but I would have much preferred to have a Joker movie with Jared Leto. Suicide Squad was I think an underrated movie. Jared Leto is an amazing actor. And unfortunately, we're going to have to watch Jared Leto as Morbius the vampire instead of the Joker. That's a freaking tragedy, an absolute tragedy. And you've got too many chiefs and not enough Indians at Warner Brothers. And that's probably a racist thing that I just said, but whatever. I'll apologize later when I'm sober.
I didn't realize Joker. I knew Joker was wildly successful, but it really made $1 billion.
Yes. Yes,
wow.
It did. It made $1 billion.
Wow. It didn't get any of my dollars, but
Joker made $1.074 billion.
Wow. That's wow.
Listen, I don't need Easter eggs. I don't need whatever. As far as I'm concerned, you make a good movie, you make a good movie. Like, would it be cool to get a little allusion to something in the background? Sure. Is it going to make the movie? No. I mean, it, man. BVS had an ass ton of Easter eggs. Is it good? No. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was probably, honestly, Batman versus Superman was probably the most disappointing film I've ever seen in my life. Filled with Easter eggs, literally ripped panels out of The Dark Knight Returns. Would I rather go see the Joker any day of the week? So I really,
I can't say because I never saw the Joker. But what I will say is, so Boom and I, we do come from a different generation of comic book readers, and suffered the stigma of, oh, you read funny books? What are you, a little baby? So for us, seeing Easter eggs in a movie, it means something different than it does for you young whippersnappers who have grown up in a time where comic book movies are the norm as opposed to the exception. So I think there's something to be said for that. Or am I way off base? Boom.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're a little, we do come from a different age, and yeah, it's definitely, I think it is definitely, there might be a little bit of a generational impact on our viewpoints and our thinking, but I just want to quickly add that I do think that I want to be absolutely clear that I would watch Batman v Superman over the Joker any day of the week, 10 times in a row. Absolutely, there's no question in my mind. The Joker is a movie. It is a movie that was okay. I didn't mind it, but how it made $1 billion says quite a bit about the state of mind of people in general over the last 4 years. And I'll just leave it at that.
So just to kind of interject right there too. So basically, what you're saying is you prefer a McDonald's double cheeseburger over a fat juicy steak. Is what I'm getting out of you right now, Boom.
If you think the Joker is a fat, juicy steak,
the Joker is a fat, juicy steak, and Batman v Superman is the cheap McDonald's double cheeseburger. It's not even a double cheeseburger. It is a single cheeseburger with a tiny layer of cheese.
No. Let's be clear on this. Batman v Superman. Let's be absolutely clear here.
Because I will say,
very, very different
Easter
movies.
eggs does not a good movie make.
I don't think the Joker is a superhero movie, and I think it's a misnomer to put it in the same category. Batman v Superman is, and as much as you can sit there and you can look, I can poke holes in it too, but it's a superhero movie, and it's epic, and it's got cool scenes and awesome scenes and great special effects. It's not the Joker. The Joker is an introspection, a psychological introspection, and it's good. It's boring. Good. What do you mean? It's actually. There's boring parts in the Joker. It's
introspection. It's a character study. It's meant to be deep, somewhat philosophical. It actually has an overall point. Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder, as cool as some of those scenes are. Like I saw this one YouTube video a long time ago. Zack Snyder is obsessed with moments. Let's have a moment, slow-mo. Let's have a moment, slow-mo. Did you catch that? It's cool. Here, I'm going to run it in slow-mo just so you can see it. 3 hours in the ultimate cut, which did fill in some of the gaps. I will give Zack Snyder that. Like, I did see him fill in some of those gaps in the ultimate edition. But at the same time, what was Batman v Superman essentially trying to accomplish in terms of entertainment and whatnot? Versus say the Joker, which I got a hell of a lot more entertainment out of, and it's a far more simplistic film in terms of its presentation. So yeah, I will watch Joker over Batman v Superman any day of the week because there's actually something there.
Yeah, Joker. I can't. So I don't know. Batman versus Superman, I would say, is not a good movie. I don't know if the Joker is or not. So I can't really speak to that. I'll never see the Joker because
it's boring. You're not missing much.
Don't listen to Boom. The movie is amazing.
I can't stand the Joker. I have no reason to go and watch it.
But Jace, you can rest assured it's nothing like a Joker comic book. It's just a good movie.
It really is. It's about a man's descent into madness and how, he is, somewhat a product of his environment, of a failed system and stuff like that. And it's a great movie. I love that film.
Call it something else. Don't call it the Joker, and forget about him even having anything to do with DC Comics.
And that's a very good point. That's a very, very good point.
I probably
Joker really isn't exactly that. It's not really part of the genre, and that's part of the, and we can disagree about how much we enjoyed the movie, but it's actually, I think we're all kind of making the same point that it's not, it's so disconnected from everything that Warner Brothers has put out from the DC universe that everything feels disjointed. And
I will say this: we seem to agree on one particular point: is that BVS is trash.
Yeah, better than that. The only thing
even you said Boom is not a good movie. So
the only thing I can say about it,
good movie versus not good movie.
It's better than Man of Steel. That's the only thing I'll say.
Debatable.
I would not. I would disagree with that. I don't think that is better than Man of Steel.
At the end of the day, this is like aesthetic choices, and we're not going to agree. But I do want to bring up another question. I'm really curious what you guys would think about this. So I don't know if anybody here is baseball fans or anybody watching is a baseball fan. But there is a baseball executive. He's now retired and gone on to do other things. Just this last year, his name's Theo Epstein. Now, this man was the general manager of the Boston Red Sox and was in charge of putting the team together that finally broke the curse and brought a World Series back to the town of Boston after, years and years of futility and being so close so many times and having it snatched away. And then he left the Red Sox and went to the Cubs, a team so it was 96 years for the Red Sox between World Series victories. The Cubs, it was 104 years. And then he brought a World Series to Chicago. The man will be in the Hall of Fame. With these two teams, these storied franchises, the Cubs and the Red Sox, he brought them both World Series champions by building teams and knowing what the hell he was doing. The same could be said of a Mr. Kevin Feige. He's sort of won the World Series and taken Marvel to the top of the heap, pop culture, movies, building this whole Avengers Endgame thing. I'm not saying it would ever happen. I'm not saying Warner Brothers or actually AT&T probably could never pay Feige enough to come across the street. But let's say they could, just for the sake of argument. Do you think Kevin Feige, put him in charge of the Warner Brothers properties, the DC properties, could he do it again with DC?
Yes. Very simply, yes. I mean, like, first of all,
does he have to start over from scratch, throw everything out, and just?
Yeah, I think he would, for the most part. Yes, 100%. I think he needs to set his own stuff apart. I think really only now is he getting comfortable with playing with like actors from different sort of quote unquote Marvel legacy movies now that they're calling them. Obviously that was just not in the vision for the first 11, 12 years of the Marvel films. Also, if you ask me, DC has better characters than Marvel does. As somebody who has just been rampantly upset at DC Comics for perhaps 2 years straight, DC has better characters than Marvel does. I'll put that on my gravestone. I mean, they are the icons of superheroism.
Kind of one point about that too. So it's not as bad now because Disney's bought, Fox and other things, so they've got more of their own characters back. But remember, when Feige first started this, there was characters he couldn't use. Couldn't use the Fantastic Four, couldn't use the X-Men, couldn't use the Hulk, Whereas DC, everything's under that Warner Brothers umbrella. So he may have an easier time.
It's fair. Yeah. And and I think like the range of what you can do in genre film is much greater with DC characters. Marvel characters, a lot of them kind of intermingle in the same space. They're all in New York doing superhero stuff, with the exception of your Moon Knights and your Blades that you can probably go off and do genre films. Dude, DC, I mean, you can do your standard superhero film. You can go do crazy sci-fi adventures with the Green Lantern. You can go do your gritty street detective movie with at least a dozen DC characters. You could go do your flowery romance movie with somebody, name a character that I probably don't read about. Like, the range is there with DC Comics. And I think DC is also drawn DC, I just over the years, creative differences or not, have drawn some huge names interest wise into the characters in those spaces. I mean, Guillermo del Toro has been brought up for like at least 1.5 million DC projects over the years. Imagine if we got a single one of those things. So you see these directors constantly and these writers, these brilliant screenwriters being drawn to these characters and these mythologies. Dude, you could have the world by the balls with these characters, especially given that without the MCU, look at the status these characters have, right? Like the Avengers didn't get their status until the movies, and that's a testament, right? Big testament to the Marvel Studios films. With or without those films, the bat symbol is an icon all over the world. You could walk into the street center in Syria, and a little kid would recognize a Superman shirt on your chest. That doesn't happen with any of the Marvel characters besides maybe Spider-Man prior to the films.
Yeah.
So,
I would just actually like to add to that too. I mean, even when you get down to like, the whole comparison between Marvel and DC, this is really one of the reasons you do got to kind of hand it to Feige a little bit, is because he essentially made $1 billion film franchise off B-level characters.
there it is, the goods.
Yeah.
The
And I just want to add one thing here. If I walked up to Warner Brothers right now and I said to Warner Brothers, look, I guarantee you, I can tell you that in 10 years, if you give me 10 years and you're patient, and if I can give you 23 movies in 10 years and 98% of them make over $1 billion, are you interested? I have a sneaking suspicion they'd say sure. But the problem with Warner Brothers right now is that they have no patience. I got to tell you, what they have to do is they have to start from scratch, from zero. They have to start over. 10 years goes by very quick. I don't know, like most people seem to forget that it was only like 10, 12 years ago now that Marvel Universe didn't even have a movie out. And then
2008 was Iron Man, so
2008, yeah. So
February, so 13 years ago.
But when you look when an Endgame hit, it was like a total of 11 years, wasn't it? Like with Endgame, we're talking about what a difference a decade can make. A decade of slowly building it up. But you know what the problem is that every director comes along and they figure that they're gonna reinvent the wheel. I mean, look at the arrogance of Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was so successful. Wonder Woman, the first movie of Wonder Woman, it was only good because of the No Man's Land sequence. You take the No Man's Land sequence out of Wonder Woman, the whole goddamn movie was mediocre. I swear to God, that was it. If you look at all the reviews, everything, read the reviews. There isn't a single one that doesn't mention No Man. That one scene made the movie, and unfortunately, it was almost like a curse. It was the curse in disguise of a blessing, because it gave Patty Jenkins could do no wrong. And then look at the nonsense plot that we got. I mean, she did what she could with it, but I mean, she approved that crap. You have to unify. You have to have a unifying vision. And guys, we talk comic books all the time. And a very quick point here. One thing about comic books, we love writers that can go into an existing continuity and still blow us away with a fantastic story, even though they're dealing with a complicated continuity. Jonathan Hickman can make X-Men interesting again. Jeff Johns can redeem a Hal Jordan who became Parallax and make it feel accessible to new readers. I mean, example after example exists that writers that are good enough can work within existing continuity, but somehow the movie industry struggles with that concept. It's really simple. You have a template. You say, look, directors, I can make your career. You can be, all you got to do is come in. If you want to shine, fine. There's no reason why they couldn't have done a Joker movie within the confines. You could still have a commentary on mental illness and the degradation of the human mind and slowly devolving into madness within the context of the continuity of the DC universe. And you could have still have done a Joker movie in that same manner, and it could have been within a cohesive continuity. But the fact is, they don't have the vision, they don't have the discipline, and most of all, they don't have patience.
Well, they don't have patience because AT&T now owns them. Because remember, when Marvel started off doing this, it was before Disney bought them. they were their own studio. They didn't have anybody to answer to. It was Marvel Studios that did it. Obviously, they had other production partners and everything. But every time I hear about decisions being made at DC Comics or Warner Brothers movies or HBO, like anything to do on the creative side, all I can think of is at the end of the day, the buck stops at the top with AT&T, which for over a decade is voted every year as the worst run company in the world. And I'm not making this up. Go and look it up. They are voted as the worst run company in the world year after year after year. And they're over $140 billion in debt. So they don't have patience. You're right, because their asses are on the line. That's what these executives are trying to do. They're making decisions based on short-term gains because they figure I'm just going to cover my own ass so that I don't get fired. And whatever happens 10 years from now, because that's how the timeline Boom's given for how long it would take to turn it around, I know I won't be in this job in 10 years because AT&T is still going to be the worst run company. I'm going to get fired or I'm going to retire. I'm going to get my golden parachute. And I don't care, basically. I'm just looking out for myself. That's the bottom line. They're owned by AT&T. And I said this when the merger went through, when it got approved by Congress that AT&T could buy Warner Brothers, that was the end of the DC Comics that we knew. And it took a couple years, but now look where we are, reading future state absolute crap with just, bad comic after bad comic.
This is the end of everything. DC.
Sing it, Joey.
Each state. It sucks so much that we can only read indies.
Let me get my harmonica.
God, gee, what have I devolved? What have this show devolved into? Jesus Christ. No, I mean, the worst part was that the DCEU was reactionary from the jump, and then AT&T happened, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, they were like,
sorry, man. Go ahead.
Boom digging. Everybody throw your coins at the screen.
I can't feel my broken finger anymore. It's great.
No, I mean, they were reactionary.
Hand, Joey.
They were reactionary pretty much from the jump. They're, Superman. How about a backdoor Trinity movie? Also, did we mention that Superman is an analog for Jesus? Because I'll do it again.
I am Jesus. I am Jesus.
So that was,
putting Goyer and Snyder in charge of the Man of Steel. Like, I don't know if I've ever told you guys a story. So I was at San Diego Comic-Con for the 75th anniversary panel of Superman. I mean, I wasn't there for that, but I was there and covering things for the podcast and this and that. But that was a panel I went to. And normally I don't usually go to the giant panels. This was a giant panel in a big room. Normally I'm, sitting right in the front at a DC panel in the press area. But this was a big deal. The 75th anniversary. It was in a huge, like the second. It wasn't Hall H, but it was like the next biggest room they have. And they had everybody there on stage. From Henry Cavill showed up, and David Goyer was there, and the guy that played Jimmy Olsen in the movies, the guy that played Jimmy Olsen on the radio. What's his name that played his voice in Superman the animated series? Tim Daly? I think his name is.
Yeah,
anyway, yeah. Jim Lee was on the panel. Like this big, huge amount of just talent, and I think Elliot S. Magnum was on the panel. Just a bunch of people. And I remember sitting. It was, like I said, a huge room. And I'm not used to going and having to stand in line or whatever. So I was pretty far back in line. I was sitting in like the next to last row at this panel. And this was after the Superman movie Man of Steel had come out, but BVS had not come out yet. And they were talking about it and what Superman means or whatever. And Goyer started talking, and he was like, yeah, I know it's controversial that Superman kills Zod in the movie. But we're really planning on, showing that as a redemptive moment when we tell the next story. And, Superman has to learn not to kill. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself how much I hated the movie, how much they didn't get who Superman was. Here he is. He's raised by Ma and Pa Kent, middle America with all those morals and all those values and everything that they instill. And it's not a lesson I need to learn. Here I am right now, sitting in my seat in this panel room in San Diego, not killing anybody. Nobody had to teach me that was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of whether I have superpowers or not, here I'm doing it. It's not a hard lesson. And all I could think while Goyer was talking was how much I hope someday to run into him in a dark alley. And maybe I'll forget that lesson.
Yeah.
Oh my God, is that guy one arrogant piece of crap? I'm sure you guys all know the Martian Manhunter story about him, right?
No, do tell.
No, go ahead, tell it.
So he was on a podcast, Comic Book Club, I think it is, and they record live in New York City. And they were talking about superheroes and whatever. And he made some comments about She-Hulk being basically a male power fantasy, and like every male secretly wants to have sex with She-Hulk and be dominated by this kind of whatever woman. And then he shifts over and says something even more offensive in regards to Martian Manhunter. You know, at this time they were developing the Superman movies. Like, yeah, it's really hard for the mainstream. They don't, know these characters. So you have to make them relatable. And he says, like, take Martian Manhunter, for example. Who in the audience knows who Martian Manhunter is? And a few hands go up, and he says, yeah, none of you are getting laid ever. And then goes on, and these are the people. We all know about Zack Snyder's comments, right? Like, oh, if you think Batman doesn't kill, you're living in a fantasy world. What do you think comics are, you dumbass? And these are the people that DC hires to tell a Superman movie. People that are insulting their target audience by saying, oh, you know who Martian Manhunter is? You're never going to get laid in your whole life. And telling people if you think Batman kills, you're living in a fantasy world. That's what comics are, you fucking moron. Yeah, I have zero respect for anything Zack Snyder or David Goyer have anything to do with or any part of it. I used to think, well, they can go do other things, and that's whatever. I just don't like their take on the DC universe. But the more I've seen what they've said and done over the years, the more I'm just like, please go away, and I don't ever want to hear your name again. Like, after they gave Zack Snyder $70, $80 million, they caved into all these fans. What is it, like 20,000 fans that want to see this Justice League cut? I already know what it's going to be. Justice League movie is bad.
Yeah, rumor has it that Walter Hamada is not a fan of the Snyder cut. That's the rumor that
it's going to be. I already know it's not going to be any good. Like, we all know. But hey, it sets a great precedent. If you don't like something, hey, just cry and moan and bitch.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get your way.
It bothers me that I mean, I'm all for it. Like, I hope it's a good movie, but if they actually spent $70 million finishing it, I think that's ridiculous. Like, I don't need them to spend. I'd rather have them $70 million on a Joker sequel than on a sequel or than a improving Justice League, because you can't really improve that. I mean, you can change some plot points, but I've been hard on the Joker, but I mean, Joker was, at least the Joker had a point, and it had a theme, and you could get into the movie for the story that it was. So I hope it does well, but 4 hours, a 4-hour superhero movie. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, fuck, if I wasn't drinking now, I'll be drinking then. That's the goddamn shit.
Yeah, no, and I understand what both y'all are saying in that case too, because there's a lot of, I know there was a lot of crying out for the Snyder cut of Justice League, because I understand it's good to let a director fulfill his vision of what he wants to do and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's kind of like you had 2 movies to get your vision across, between Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, especially, which was supposed to be your Justice League setup and whatnot. And of course, when BVS comes around and ultimately fails, that pretty much tells you, what is Justice League, even the Snyder cut, gonna end up being. It's just gonna be BVS, most likely, with far more characters and whatnot. Because essentially, yeah, that's what it is. We've already seen the vision of the Snyder cut in BVS and Man of Steel. So it's like, when it comes out, am I going to watch it? I will say absolutely yes. I'm definitely going to check it out, because I'm kind of curious to see what he wanted to to do, even though I believe he actually did some reshoots on top of that, because there was an exorbitant amount of money that was put into the Snyder cut. But then again, let's also not pretend. That the reason the Snyder cut essentially is happening is because HBO Max wanted something to put on HBO Max that was going to drive people into a frenzy to most likely want to watch.
I heard it was only 90 seconds of new footage. Did you guys?
Yeah, I read something to that effect.
I mean, that's a lot of money for $70 million.
It makes you wonder how much of that is it all special? Because where the hell did the $70 million go? Is it all special effects? Like, holy crap!
I heard that Ben Affleck came back to shoot a couple additional scenes.
Yeah, so I should clarify. So when we're talking 90 seconds of new, of new footage, that's 90 seconds from scratch. So I think a lot of the money, from my understanding, went into finishing stuff that never made it. It was shot, but it never made it to the first cut. So none of the post-production or special effects or anything of that was added in, because Whedon threw it out. So you're going to get scenes that were already shot, but never finished being produced with special effects and, lighting and score and all that. But my over-under for the amount of times that we hear Hallelujah is 6.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else wants to throw a number out there, but yeah.
I mean, it's all about the Christian references, man. He can't make you forget that Superman is a Jesus analog, so you got to reinforce that. There's some hallelujah in there.
Well, let me tell you what annoys me. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, because I know it's a mistake to comment upon things of which I know nothing, but I'm making an exception this evening. And so, yeah, and it's this whole Ray Fisher controversy, okay? I have no idea what the hell happened to Ray Fisher. I know he's obviously black. Maybe Jeff Johns said a racist thing. Maybe Jeff Johns is an asshole. I'd really like to know what the hell's going on, because a lot of chaos is happening behind the scenes. We're getting a lot of rumor and innuendo. Ray Fisher, I guess, has been fired, or I think he's not involved in the project, or he is or he isn't. I'd really like to know what the heck is going on. If I love Jeff Johns, but if Jeff Johns is a jerk and he's been a dick behind the scenes, I want to know. Inquiry minds, Comic Boom wants to know this stuff. It matters. It kind of bugs me. It really, really does. Because I want to know what the heck is going on. Nice drink there, Joey. You're the man, buddy.
I didn't even know they still made
Here, I'll put it this way.
Yeah, they didn't have Mike's Hard, so Smirnoff Ice was like the second.
Yeah, I'm with Tevye. I don't really care that much about the Ray Fisher crap. I'm sure, as with a lot of things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Ray Fisher was probably being a diva, and his career and his resume doesn't warrant that. And so he was probably getting from the producers and the directors, and there probably was bad behavior on both sides. I don't know. I don't care. I'm sick of hearing about it. And as far as him being fired, I think he fired himself, because he said as long as Walter Hamada is going to be involved with Warner Brothers, he's involved with any of their projects. So he was supposed to be in the Flash movie, and then he comes out and says it publicly, and then they say, okay, well, you're not in the Flash movie anymore. So he kind of did it for himself,
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's like anything. You sometimes in life you have to eat crap from people that make more money than you, and I know it's not fair, and I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with him being black. I know that in my job, I have to eat crap sometimes from people that don't know what they're doing and don't understand technology. I work IT, and I know better than they do. But guess what? They pay my salary, and so I eat the crap. They pay my check, and that's just life, man. And if you don't like it, I mean, we all know Hollywood is backbiting and backstabbing, and sometimes you get shit on. But, if you just kind of make your own way and you kind of put up with it for a while, then you get a bigger profile, and you're George Clooney, you're Brad Pitt, you're Keanu Reeves, and guess what? You don't have to take crap anymore. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, because I know I've read a few different articles concerning specifically Ray Fisher in terms of Justice League and stuff like that. it's really hard to tell exactly what's been going on in that, and I'm sure you're right in terms of the truth definitely lies somewhere in the middle. I think it may partly be due to the fact that, yes, there may have been, some mistreatment on Warner Brothers' part. I don't doubt that these big production companies, don't like to have it their way as if it was Burger King most of the time and stuff like that, and I can also imagine Ray Fisher was most likely frustrated because, a good superhero movie can make or break a career, and or whether it's good or bad and stuff like that. And, knowing that he had a good portion of his scenes cut out of Justice League.
There you go.
In his eyes, he may have been thinking, this really hurts my career. So he probably may have seen that as an attack on his career to a degree too. And, one of the reasons why he came out is kind of like, this, all this craziness is going on, down at Warner Brothers, there's no really true way of knowing because we're not there. We can only go off what WB says. And then of course, what Ray Fisher says, and stuff like that. And of course, both are gonna, have their sides of the story, and they're gonna, say this happened, that happened, and deny each other's claims like hardcore.
Well, I think it's telling. I think it's telling that before the movie comes out, he's at San Diego Comic-Con on the Justice League panel, and he talks about Whedon coming in and finishing the film and how grateful they are, and Whedon was a great guy. Then the movie comes out, he's barely in it, and then all of a sudden, Whedon's a jerk and I was mistreated and whatever. So he probably was willing to go along with, whatever crap Whedon was giving him. If it meant, like Joe said, it was going to make his career. Then when it turned out that his things were on the cutting room floor, now it's sour grapes to some extent.
Joe,
What do you think, Dark Knight?
Joe, your background is really loud.
We're watching any cartoons?
It's Disney. I can't really do anything about that.
Okay, that's why I keep muting you when you're not speaking so that we can.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll mute myself right now until I have something to say, which I don't know when it'll be. Ice is spelled I-S-E.
Anyways, I mean, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, if Jeff Johns, and John Berg and whoever mistreated Ray Fisher and something comes out, I'm all for it, let the truth be heard. On the other hand, if you're going to bitch and moan and make all of these big statements about it, why the fuck aren't you being specific? I mean, really? Social media is power nowadays. So if he's able to garner such a following by saying absolutely nothing about what happened, why wouldn't you be specific? Right? What's boxing you up here?
Yeah.
Because what it looks like from my end is a talented actor coming from Broadway and the stage, who, by the way, has almost no movie credits. None. Right? In Hollywood, his resume is as good as mine, right? So let's make that clear. He comes in, he gets butthurt that his scenes got chopped out. And now, to his credit, even in Joss Whedon's Justice League, the cyborg shit was the best part. So I'll give him credit where credit's due. It's not like I don't like Ray Fisher. But if you're going to make such massive claims, be vague about them, and expect everybody to follow you, then that's just not how it works, dog. I mean, really, and to be fair, I am a huge fan of Jeff Johns, and part of that is because I've heard nothing but great things about what people have to say about Jeff Johns, his work ethic, how he treats people in comics, and how he treats people in film. So, Ray Fisher, if I'm to believe what if I'm to believe what you have to say, why won't you be specific? Because I don't care about your claims until there's a reason to care about them. I'm not going to care because you tell me to care, right? This isn't a Scott Snyder 2020 comic book. You don't get to tell me to care and not show me why I should care. Okay. So it's like you guys were saying, as far as I'm concerned, it kind of looks like they didn't give him as much screen time as he wanted. And again, Ray Fisher, this was like one of your first big Hollywood movies. If
Well,
they
let me-
got a recast
I just-
Cyborg, I don't think
Well-
they're too upset about it.
I just have to say though, this goes back to my earlier point that this is none of this would have happened if DC. This would never happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe
No.
ever. Because Kevin Feige, he would fire that crap before it even got anywhere. He'd fire the person responsible. He would say, enough of this nonsense. This is schoolyard bullshit, and it's an embarrassment. And let me just say, as a put down to Warner Brothers in general, if your movies are so goddamn good, what the hell are you doing spending $70 million redoing a movie you already released and it failed spectacularly? Come on. You need,
Yeah,
I mean, it's inexcusable, and this schoolyard nonsense and this argument behind the scenes. Of course, look, and then here everyone's speculating about it. Ray Fisher's going online saying all this crap, and he's not saying anything. That's the frustrating thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than somebody. This is the boy who's crying wolf, and if he's actually saying something truthful, we don't know because he won't give evidence. Look, and I want to be very fair to him. If he's been screwed over, he's been screwed over, and that's not right.
Right.
But why? This is a 4-hour movie. My understanding is that an hour of the movie is all Cyborg. So what's he bitching about? So on the one hand, he's trying to suck and blow at the same time. I'm pretty sure if I'm a betting man, and I am, by the way, I'm a gambler. I'm betting that Ray Fisher's getting a pretty nice payday out of this 4-hour cut for him HBO Max, if I'm venturing a guess. So I'm thinking somehow that had a little bit to say about suddenly he's yapping and chomping at the bit. I'm sure his lawyers like that little play card that they could play in negotiations. Okay, well, we won't explore our evidence, but we like the number. Just add a number zero and a couple of zeros. You paid $10 million to Gal Gadot for a Wonder Woman movie that nobody watched on HBO Max. So let's sweeten the pot for Ray Fisher. I'm being a cynical bastard here, but I think that it really this is the stuff that pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I do know.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I know, because I was gonna say, like, one of the most notable things that I did find out of the whole Ray Fisher scenario and stuff like that was when I was, reading the article saying that, all these different websites and articles were trying to reach out to Ray Fisher for comment and clarification on exactly what had happened, during the shots with like Justice League and the Joss Whedon reshoots and stuff like that. And, he couldn't be reached for commenting at all. You think a guy that, had this big overall mistreatment would be chomping at the bit to get his story out there, because even if he had signed some kind of NDA, which I'm sure he did sign an NDA saying, he can't say certain things here, the minute the minute he gets his thoughts out there and saying, hey, we were mistreated and stuff like that, you think at that point it's kind of like, okay, let's just get it all out there. Let's get it into the ether and, see what comes out of it and stuff like that, So it's kind of like the fact that he sort of like, it almost sounded like he refused to comment any further other than we were like, I was mistreated to some degree and stuff like that. That's it.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, so I do know Jeff Johns personally, and a lot of it, granted, is okay. I interviewed him at this convention or that convention or whatever, and obviously he's in what I'll call show mode at that moment. He's on stage, as it were. But I've also spent time with Johns not at the convention. At the bar after hours. Hanging out with creators and whatever. I've talked movies and film with him. And it's a totally different situation. We're not under the stressful umbrella of making a movie, which, again, it's a very stressful situation for everybody involved. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of people that, question creative decisions and things like that. But to echo what a lot of people say about Jeff, I've never had anything but a blast whenever I've hung out with Jeff. Is he a perfect person? No. Did I ever see Jeff lose his temper? No. Has Jeff ever lost his temper? Of course. because we all have. So again, I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but I just have, from what I know of Jeff and how much he cares about telling stories, how much he cares about these characters, I just have a hard time believing that he would have done anything abusive. Now, whether or not Ray Fisher is saying, well, the problem that I have with John Berg and Jeff Johns is they enabled Joss Whedon. Right. Again, I can't speak to that. I wasn't there. But
right.
I mean, you're going to have to show me irrefutable proof before I believe that Jeff Johns was abusive to somebody, because, again, I know him personally, and that is not the person that I know.
Yeah.
That's
100%. And the thing is, again, that you would think that somebody with a loaded gun would at least fire a warning shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you're not shooting for the chest, fire a fucking warning shot. Give us something. But there's nothing there. And like you said, it sounds like a case of, because I think there seems to be, at bare minimum, amongst the cast of Justice League, that nobody liked Joss Whedon. Nobody really cared for Joss Whedon, his film. Right. So is Ray Fisher, like, as far as I'm understanding it, it sounds like Ray Fisher is just upset because Jeff Johns, mind you, who had just walked away from his executive position with Warner Brothers and DC Comics, who clearly was on their shit list, right, after stepping away from those positions, probably lacking the power that he's. I mean, first of all, it's never quite seemed that he's carried all that much power. It's always seemed like, regarding the film stuff, people always looked at Johns as the comic book guy and nothing more, and just kind of disregarded him. So, you know, again, you don't know for certain, but you can obviously make inferences based on what we know and what we don't know. And what we know is that somebody with a loaded gun should fire at bare minimum a warning shot to let us know.
They brought in a third, an independent third party to do an investigation.
That's right.
And there were some consequences of what happened. So clearly they uncovered something, but I don't think it rose to the level of what Fisher is representing it as.
Well, also the worst part is, out of that whole conversation, right? Like, Ray Fisher released a soundbite of his conversation as if it were the nail in Jeff Johns' coffin. It was one of the people through the private investigation that was just saying he was polite. Good job, Ray. You're polite. And while I'm really glad that as a functioning adult you can be polite, I don't think it's going to incriminate anybody.
Yeah.
So if you're going to release a soundbite, perhaps it's of the investigator saying, you know, we've reached out and we've looked into your claims, oh sweet Ray Fisher, and we've discovered that the claims you are making are true. Now, even if they cut it off there, right, and we don't know the exact claims he's making, it could be super vague. He could say, Josh didn't let me go to the bathroom in the middle of shooting the scene. You don't know. And I'm not, and part of me is just like, okay, I'm getting a little bit buzzed. Of course, I'm going to make light of it. Again, if Jeff Johns was a total asshole and took advantage of Ray Fisher's status or whatever, and he was a part of whatever, let him have it, right? Let him have what he deserves. But again, just like, if you like, okay, if I'm going to get into a fight with one of you guys, right? Like, I'm going to puff my chest. I'm going to flex my shit. I'm going to intimidate somebody before I throw my first punch.
I'm ready.
Ray Fisher is just making fucking kissy faces at people, trying to intimidate them. Like, there's nothing coming out. Again, like, and also, so it's like, if you're like, what is the angle here, right? So you're going to give me the most innocuous soundbite from your investigation, but you're not going to say anything regarding the actual case or the legitimacy of the claim. You're not even going to give me like the full contents of your claim. So then it comes down to, well, there's a professional courtesy. Well, you're not going to work for Warner Brothers anyways, so what do you have to lose, right? Like you just said you'll never work for them as long as Walter Hamada's there. Sir fucking Prize, Walter Hamada just signed another fucking contract, dog. Like if you got a bullet in the chamber, fire it off. I don't get it.
Got called. That's what happened.
And I think it's just immensely frustrating because you do have people that are just like, you know, kind of ignorantly supporting Jeff Johns without sort of outlining the facts. And you have a great body of people that are ignorantly supporting Ray Fisher just because he claims this or claims that. You know, I just want it to be resolved. Again, if Ray Fisher's first of all, we don't even know what Ray Fisher's claims are, but if Ray Fisher's claims are sufficient and proven true, you know, whatever has to be done has to be done. And I will criticize Jeff Johns as much as the next guy. You know, I'm not ashamed of you know, throwing a little bit of shade at people that I respect. Cough, Scott Snyder. But like, there's just everything feels so air thin. You know what I'm saying?
I can tell you this, like from a purely legal point of view, I think it's absolutely clear here that some things were absolutely resolved behind the scenes. And that there's no question that both parties, both Ray Fisher and both Warner Brothers, played the media. And they both played the media very delicately, very deliberately, very intentionally. They've reached a resolution. This is my guess. This is an educated guess, but it's one based on just on the fact that they both kept their mouth shut and they're not giving interviews and they're not giving specifics. I think that tells you everything you want to know. And why? It's really a simple concept. Mutually assured destruction. Guess what's going to happen? After HBO Max releases the 4-hour Justice League movie, if it's a disaster and it bombs, and Ray Fisher's contract was that he was going to get a percentage or something or whatever, he's going to sing like a goddamn canary. And then you're going to get a hell of a lot more. I guarantee it. This is a fact.
Yeah, Warner Brothers is paying Ray Fisher to say, hey, keep talking smack in the press because there's no somebody just said it. Mark.
Yeah.
Remember, bad press is still press. Somebody
That's right.
could have somehow, hey, keep that focus on the Justice League movie. So when the Snyder Cut comes out on HBO Max, people, maybe we'll be able to see Ray Fisher and Joss Whedon, you know, in a reflection, and Joss is like touching Ray Fisher's junk, and that's really where this
look at the optics here. Look how bad the optics are here for DC. The optics here are terrible. Like, let's be very, very blunt about this. I'm just gonna say it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat my words. He's black. We got Black Lives Matter movement. We got Trump just was dethroned. I mean, good Lord. And then we've got a 4-hour Justice League movie, another hour which involves a main black character, a minority character, a diverse character. This is potentially really good diversity. This is really good publicity for Warner Brothers moving forward. The bottom line, they don't want to screw that up. Let's be blunt. And yet here's Ray Fisher, even now, hinting at that he's still pissed off. He's still kind of being the fly in the ointment of a perfectly well-oiled machine that could make more money. It's like, Ray, keep your mouth shut. If you're going to bitch about us, wait until after we premiere the 4-hour Justice League remake. Please keep your mouth shut for a little longer, and then we can deal with you after the fact, and you can bitch and whine and complain to the media and write a book on it as you wallow into obscurity with the rest of all these other people who complain about Hollywood and the powers that be. That's what they want. That's what's going on behind the scenes. And in the meantime, all this is just noise. All this is just noise. And the Justice League movie, my prediction is the HBO is it's gonna suck. People are gonna talk about it. People are gonna wonder where the $70 million went. And you know, I mean, it is what it is. But the whole thing just rubs me the wrong way. And it's, to me, I think we're being played. I think we're being played by both sides here. Both sides. I'm not picking a side because we don't know the facts. And isn't that sad and pathetic that we don't know the facts, and yet they're creating this gamemanship in this show? Like, more people have read articles about this nonsense controversy between Ray Fisher and Jeff Johns than are going to actually watch the goddamn HBO movie in the first place.
100%. 100%. Hey, do you guys want to talk some comics? I know Trevor recently was reading Crossover from Donny Cates, and I know Boom and I have been loving it, but it seems like it wasn't hitting your comic book fan funny bone there.
Okay, so hear me out. I like the series. I'm enjoying the series. It's a fun little romp.
You've read all 3 issues that have come out so far?
Yeah, I've read all 3 issues.
Okay.
He, like the gentleman to my right, misunderstood the end of Watchmen. He's just,
No, you said the beginning. You said the beginning of Watchmen. When you
did I?
tweeted-
I meant
Yeah.
to say the end.
The
No, I
beginning, the end doesn't really matter.
I thought I
mean, in
said,
the grand
but I
scheme
thought I said that. No. I thought I said the beginning of crossover 3.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up.
pickles
Yes, please.
are almost like
You can-
cucumbers.
Listen, if you can do it one thing, you gotta do the thing that Ray Fisher should have done, and just show us the tweets. Show
You're
us.
right, you're right. You said, "Is it just me, or did the first page of crossover number 3 just misinterpret the ending of Watchmen?"
Which it did, by the way, because he's like, "Why the heroes come together? They're fighting in Antarctica, dog."
Come together right now over me.
So nobody really came together for any definable period of time. That's like the big illusion. The whole thing is a nihilist perspective on superheroism and Americana. Also, even the direct sequel to Watchmen, now in canon, Doomsday Clock, also shows that the world falls to shit the minute the camera cuts off at the end of Watchmen. Also, if we're going the other route, the television show kind of does the same thing to a lesser extent. So, as much as I'm enjoying crossover, mind you, it's not like the most transformative, metaphorical, independent comic book that is just flooded with authorship, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having a really good time.
Power Rangers is.
I don't know what you just said.
Power Rangers, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
This dude's smoked. He's gone.
Joey, what do you want? Are you on your second drink?
Hold on.
Yes.
He's like 1% alcohol, 2% alcohol.
Yes, I agree with you, Trevor. But I did notice that when I read it, but I took it as Donnie is going to stop the camera on Watchmen where he needs the camera to stop in order to have it to tie into the story that he wants to tell.
I like Donnie, but that's lazy. That's lazy. It's late. It's lazy. You know, it's almost like Ray Fisher making claims and not backing them up. I'm sorry, I'm done.
Well, but what happens if Donnie then the whole point being he understands that it's a commentary on superheroism, because I think it feels like crossover might get there once they get inside the dome.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean,
that would make it more interesting because it would speak to evolution in the story.
perhaps. I don't know. I mean, in general, I mean, Drunk Trev really just wants to talk about how good indie comics are right now. Because the big two is just
Comics.
is just blowing chunks. Tevian, buddy, I know you want us to talk about Future State, pal. I mean this in the most loving way possible. The last thing I want to talk about. The last thing I want to talk about is Future State, pal. I'm sorry.
Go listen to our Future State Fridays, and
yes,
it's like 2 hours. Each episode is like 2
was an
hours.
amazing video, you two. Definitely. Pfeffer needs new shorts.
yes. So yeah,
Future State talk there.
if you want to hear us talk about Future State, yeah, go click the link in the description below. Comic Source Podcast. Go click on the Future State Fridays. There's 2 of them up already. I'm sorry, pal. I'm drunk. I'm in a good mood. I really don't feel like changing that by talking about Future State. You know,
I don't think Future State is that bad that it would make us drink more.
it's because you're desperate. You're desperate.
Well, I mean, the Future State has some like give and pull. You know, it's just like for every, you know, I mean, I will say Future State's kind of like this. For every one I read that's decent, there's about 3 that's just complete ass.
Yeah, like dick stroke.
Exactly.
Hey, am I
Deathstroke is.
Was
I mean,
awful.
I will say this. I think that Dickstroke could potentially have some positive effects on the DC universe moving forward after the supposed not 5G thing. Yeah, like I would like to see Dickstroke moving forward and actually have them call them Dickstroke. What the fuck am I looking at right now?
What you're saying is dick stroke could end up having a long history.
I think with an I honestly I think with enough, I think with enough stroking on the writing, Dickstroke could explode at some point.
Yeah. He could bust. Dick stroke could bust if you stroke him enough. And you could really just hit the wall of your shower. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Taylor Pector. He mentioned Darwin Cook's Parker books.
Yes,
I
he did.
own them. I read them. They're fantastic. I just want to give a shout out to that. Great call there, Taylor. Yeah, Darwin Cook, God bless his soul, man. He left us way too soon. I love those Parker books, man. He's a legend. That left us
Justice
way too
League,
soon.
New Frontier.
Yes, New
Yeah,
Frontier, all his work. And speaking of Darwin Cook, this is a guy that wanted to do. He wanted to do a rebirth for Marvel. He had that concept, and there's a famous story with Darwin Cook throwing his drink all over Axel Alonso, because that deal fell through, and he blamed Axel Alonso for that. He threw his drink all over him. I think it was at a San Diego Comic-Con, and I think Jace, you must know that story, right? I mean, you should talk next time you talk to Jimmy Palmiotti. You should talk to him about that story, because I know that
That's not something we'll go on record as. But
yeah.
there are stories and there are stories.
No, Darwin Cooks, he talked about that in an interview. He confirmed that. But anyways, I digress. But in other words, it's okay to drink and talk comic books, even if you're
Drinks
a
to
creator
you,
and a
Darwin Cook.
Yeah, one of the best.
Fair.
One of the best stories from a convention is actually Joshua Dysart getting in a fight with the bouncer, which is another one I can't go on record as. But that's my favorite. That's my favorite Comic-Con story of all time. But since we're talking independent comics, I actually want to talk about an independent comic that's coming up, hasn't come out yet. Comes out February 10th. So yesterday, I got a chance to speak to Kyle Higgins, who I know, Boom, you're a fan of.
Sure.
He got his Radiant Black series coming up, and it just got announced either earlier today or late yesterday. The first issue has orders of 70,000 copies. It sold 70,000 copies. And Diamond hasn't confirmed this, but it's been rumored that it's already a sellout. So not only has it sold 70,000 copies, but that 70,000 copies is it's gone. That's in comic shops, and I think I remember Kyle telling me they're not going to do a second printing. So I know there are some really cool covers. There's like a Power Rangers inspired. I think 1 in 25 or 1 in 50. But I did get a chance to read the first couple issues. Guys, it's so good.
It's called Radiant Black.
It's called Radiant Black.
Yeah.
And I would say it's kind of a, how people say Invincible is sort of the Spider-Man for the new generation.
Yep.
So think about Radiant Black taking inspiration from Invincible and inspiration from Spider-Man. And then you've got Kyle Higgins telling the story and him experimenting with the way the story is told. And it's a beautiful book to look at in terms of design and color and artwork. It's going to be a big hit. I've been telling everybody.
Is it Kickstarter or is it Image or what?
No, it's Image.
Yeah.
It's coming out from Image. And I've been telling everybody, hey, you guys need to let your retailers know that you want this book now. There's an A and a B cover, and then there is some tiered variants. I guarantee this book's going to be tough to get, and it could be the next. If you want to talk about from a perspective of the spec market. It could be the next Invincible.
Right on. Is it when's final order cut off? Is it already passed?
I think it already passed.
Already
Yeah,
passed?
it comes out in a couple weeks. Comes out on February 10th.
I'll see if I can get it still, but I
And I do want to say Kyle Higgins Ultraman is great. It's a good story. It's Ultraman. It's based on a Japanese tokusatsu series called Ultraman. I have a model. I'm going to build it later.
it is. Are you
Great.
talking about the Marvel series Ultraman?
Yeah.
Right. You're
The
talking about,
Marvel series Ultraman, absolutely. Like, I mean, it's very interesting to see that. I gotta give Kyle Higgins some props. Quite honestly, in terms of like his ability to write stories and stuff like that. Because not only did he kickstart the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series for Boom Studios, and later, going over to Marvel to start the Ultraman series and stuff. Two tokusatsu properties that he that ended up being really, really, really good. And of course, you're talking about this new Kyle Higgins book and stuff like that. The dude's just a good writer and stuff. And I forgot where I was going with that, so I'm gonna mute myself, guys.
Well, the interview with Kyle talking about Radiant Black will be up on Tuesday on my podcast, the Comic Source podcast. So you're definitely going to want to listen to it, Joe, because he talks about the influences. We talk a lot of Power Ranger stuff, talk a little bit about Ultraman, and obviously a lot of talk about Radiant Black. So definitely check it out. And let your retailers know now, because I guarantee this book's it's gonna be like the hot book of the week when it hits the racks.
See,
I'm definitely looking forward to it myself. To be honest. So, I'm sorry, Dark Knight.
You're good. Don't worry about it, buddy. You're good.
Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mark knows.
Go.
Drawn to come. Mark, do you live in Phoenix or Glendale?
Yeah, Mark is in Arizona.
That when I first moved to Arizona, Drawn to Comics was my first local comic shop before I moved to North Phoenix, and now it's too far.
Mark is definitely in Arizona. Mark was also one of the beautiful people that bought my comic book. So Mark, let it be said that I fucking love you, man. That's it. That's all I have to say. I mean, I'm always a little bit skeptical when it comes to indie superhero comics, because I feel like if you're going to go out of your way to do something that is like even vaguely derivative of a Marvel or DC character, like you got to have a really hot take. You know what I'm saying? You have to have a perspective or an angle or an approach that is going to be totally different from anything that you're seeing at one of the big two. And so I'm always a little bit timid with that stuff. You know what I mean? Like I think Carrie Andrews is doing like a Spider-Man Static Shock derivative character for AWA Upshot right now. So I'd heard of the Radiant Black stuff, but admittedly, I had kind of disregarded it initially as just, okay, cool. Like we're getting like the fourth Spider-Man analogous character, that we've had in the last 3 or 4 years, but I mean, if you're saying it's that good.
Well, so here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say, Trevor. Listen to the podcast.
Okay.
Kyle, we go. So the first thing I talk to Kyle about when it comes to the series is it's not about any of the superhero stuff. It's about the more personal stuff. Kyle has gone on record of saying this is the story that he's kind of been training to tell his whole life. And, you being a creator yourself and going through the struggles of Kickstarter and putting your own book out and everything, he talks about. So let me just give you like real briefly. So the story starts off, first page, first panel. The guy is on the phone. He's like the equivalent of an Uber driver. He's on his phone with his bank. You see his checking account balance is $46, and the voice on the phone is telling him, sorry, we can't approve your loan. And you look at his phone and it's got like $38,000+ in credit card debt. So he moved to Los Angeles to try to make it as a writer. And now he ends up having to crawl back home to the Midwest with his tail between his legs because it didn't work out. So it's a lot about that, right? Like about being a creative, what is success, what is failure, how, and it's something we can all identify with, how that plays into who your identity is and your self-worth and all that kind of stuff. So it's got that, underneath in terms of relatability and an interesting and complex character. And then on top of that, he discovers this basically this little miniature black hole that gives him powers, and you know, in the first couple issues, it's not explained how. But then you build on that with really cool superhero action and great art. And so, and again, we go into all this in the interview. So, like, listen to the episode, and you will know from what Kyle says if it's going to be for you or not. And he does mention about how the story really kind of took on a life of its own, and the Radiant Black universe, if you will, sounds like Kyle's got plans that if it does hit, it can maybe go into other, and I'm kind of reading between the lines in what he said. It could go into other media, and it could be a thing where, you know, he's doing something similar to what Jeff Lemire did at Dark Horse with the Black Hammer, where it could kind of spawn its own kind of self-contained. I mean, we have seen other creators at Image start talking about doing a shared superhero universe, and recently Image has been tweeting out on social media like Ed Brisson, Michael Walsh, Kelly Thompson, Jeff Lemire. I'm like, what is this? I got to pay attention to this because it's a murderer's row of talent. So who knows? Maybe Kyle Higgins will be on that list, because like right now we've got Marvel in terms of shared superhero universe. We've got Marvel, we got DC. Valiant is actually the third largest shared superhero universe, but we all know they've been crap ever since the guys that brought it back in 2012 left. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them fold up shop at some point here in the next year.
I do want to say right there that still Ninjak is freaking awesome. He's a ninja super spy for MI6.
Ninjak their characters are still awesome, but they haven't put out anything decent in quite a while.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
things are happening, dude. I'm telling you. I'm muting again.
Okay. Well, somebody's got to cover for my buddy Joe. So I will just say this. I do actually collect, in actual fact, I actually get all the Valiant titles. I get all of them. I still read them all. I still love Ray. I think it's underrated. I think that I think
Dan Abnett, right?
What's that?
Dan
Abnett. Yeah, I think it's actually an excellent. It's one of the best. I think it's the best comic book being published by Valiant today is Ray, R-A-I, Ray, the Ray comic book, and I do share, like, there's been a general downturn in qualities over the last few years. Although I still support them, and I still enjoy it, and I still get the. I still collect them regularly, and I'm glad that I do. And I hope that they don't. I hope that they don't. I really hope they don't fail. Because this industry needs more comic book publishing companies, not less. I was going to ask you, Chase, because I'm actually kind of curious. I'm kind of glad I got you here, because you've got sort of the pulse, because you talk to a lot of you talk to a lot of creative types and creators. The sense that I get just listening to your interviews and listening to their and I do listen to your podcast, and again I push everyone toward watching Comic Source podcast. It's great. You do. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of work that you do. I don't know where you find the time, Jace. Do you actually have a job other than talking to creators? Oh my God, man!
I have
Seriously, you're God. You're God. You have my utmost respect.
Yeah, I don't sleep much.
Yes, well, it shows, believe me. But I mean, you look good. I mean, you look okay, but obviously the quality of your work is really good. I'm being serious. I'm trying to be serious. That's the problem when you're drunk trying to throw a compliment to somebody. I apologize.
I thought you were just trying to flirt with the man.
Yeah. He's trying to Ray Fisher me.
Exactly. Yeah. I got no evidence, but you really bother me, and I don't know why. No,
trying to get his dick stroke on. You dig?
It's okay. We'll put out a 4-hour podcast later.
Coming soon to a comic near you.
Yes, it's on HBO Max. Anyways, my question is this: there seems to be a general sentiment that there's a movement away from the big two. That it's gradual. It's starting now more so than ever. Do you think it's all bullshit, Jace, or do you think that this really is the beginning of the end? We have a movement of creators away from DC. There's been a huge creative movement. We have a lot of new names for DC at DC, even at Marvel. Is this do you think, Jace, that this is the beginning of a movement away from is this the beginning of the end of the big two dominance? What's your view on that?
Yeah, actually, I think that's true. And I should phrase it this way. So I think that you're going to see an increasing number of creators that we have associated with big two titles go and do their own thing. I think that it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We had the pandemic, that started last year. A lot of publishers were pencils down. And so, if you're a freelancer and you want to keep money coming in, you have no choice but to seek other alternative means of distribution. You still have stories you want to tell. And maybe that pitch you had for Superman, you transform it into, a different character. The story's still valid. And you go and you crowdsource it, or you go to a smaller publisher, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, something like that. And the more creators that do that, the more other creators start to take notice and say, hey, I could do that too. At the same time, you have DC, which for almost a decade now has been the publisher that was paying the highest rates in terms of, page rates for artists, whether, penciler, inker, color artist, letterer. The writers were getting a lot of exclusive contracts, more so on that side of the street as opposed to Marvel. And now with AT&T pinching pennies and that filtering down, you're seeing, no more exclusive contracts. They're really going to start tightening their belts. Hey, who can we get in here to write our books? Well, if Future State is any example, let's dip into people that are kind of unknowns, because part of what they see as their compensation is the fact they get to finally tell their Batman story. They get to finally write the character they love, whether it be Tim Drake Robin or John Stewart Green Lantern or what have you. So all of a sudden the pay rates are dropping. And if you're somebody who's been at DC for 8 or 10 years and you've been getting a steady rate and now they want to cut it by 40%, and you're no, I can go and do something at Image, and even if it doesn't sell as many copies, I'm going to actually make more money because I own 80% of it. And if I do catch lightning in a bottle and it's the next Walking Dead or Invincible or whatever, then next Kick-Ass, then I could be set for life, And so it's not a big surprise. So I think you are going to see more and more creators. I know many of them who are going over and, now's the time, they've seen others do it, and now's the time. So, but what I think is going to happen is, so the pendulum is going to swing over. We've had a lot of, huge amount of talent at DC Comics. I think the talent level at DC has, for probably at least the last 5 or 6 years, has been greater on average than the talent level over at Marvel, especially artistically. And so what's going to happen is you're going to see a huge exodus, and the pendulum's going to swing over to where everybody's over here in the creator-owned space. But there still is a finite number of dollars in the industry, right? So not everybody is going to succeed. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up somewhere in the middle. You may have a few big-name creators or kind of the medium-tier creators who go over and try to do it that have that loyal fan base, but that might not be enough to still sustain them. So you may see them come back over and do some things. I mean, ideally, if you're in that mid-tier for a creator, especially an artist, maybe you're doing 1 or 2 covers for Marvel or DC a month, and you're working on your own creator-owned property. So yeah, I think you are going to see an exodus. Now, whether that means you'll see Image actually pass DC or Marvel, I don't know. I could see Image maybe possibly passing DC in terms of market share and dollars, but I don't see them passing Marvel. You have that rabid Marvel zombie fan base that's just never going to go away, apparently, no matter how bad the books get or how many times they relaunch with number ones. I could see Image taking over the number 2 spot, but I don't think it would be anything on a consistent basis. And the last thing I'll say is it also depends on, so when you talk about creator-owned, are you publishing it yourself through Kickstarter? Because I think there's a lot of creators who don't realize just how much work that is and how many decisions are taken away from them that they don't even have to think about in terms of marketing your book and decisions about paperweights and, cover stock and, where's my shipment? Oh, it's stuck at some dock in LA right now because it's a 10-day wait to even get your ship unloaded. Obviously, some of those things will get better as we come out of the pandemic, but there's a lot more work involved. And Jimmy Palmiotti talks about this all the time. In fact, I think it was the last time I talked to him. It wasn't for a podcast, but just the last time I talked to him, he mentioned to me how when the pandemic first started, he had a lot of creators that reached out to him and said, "Hey, I want to pick your brain about Kickstarter stuff." And he said he had like almost 40 people call him and ask him. He goes, "Yeah, I had 20 people that basically were saying in the first 5 minutes, wait, it's that much work. I'm not gonna bother. It's too many decisions to make."
Yeah.
So it depends on which way you go. Are you going to go with something like an Aftershock where you have it's creator owned, but you got to give a percentage away to the publisher Aftershock, and they handle a lot of those, sort of day-to-day decisions, kind of the technical side of it, in exchange for a percentage? Or are you going to go with Image where they just print it for you and they're under the umbrella and you're making all the decisions yourself? Or are you going to even go to Kickstarter where you have 100% control, but it takes so much longer to get your books out? So you're going to have people that fall in different places along the spectrum, depending on what they do. But yeah, you definitely are seeing an exodus. And the other thing is, so these people that are coming in to fill the vacuum, like a lot of the creators on Future State, how successful will they be? How successful will the sales be once we get 4 or 5 months of this not very good content?
Yeah.
Then what does DC do? Do they say, okay, well, let's bump the rates back up and try to lure some of those people back? Yeah, we're in a very interesting time in the industry. 2021 is going to be a very, very interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, we're talking about the quality of DC. I think it's been pretty subpar these last 2 years. And you're starting to see a lot of these, whether it be Image or Boom or, Dark Horse or whatever, you're seeing a lot of these independent publishers really start to gain steam. I mean, frankly, who cared about Boom Studios 2 years ago? Anybody? No, no. But what do they have right now? They have the guy that made the Hulk outsell Batman, right? They have Al Ewing. They got James Tynion with Something Is Killing the Children, immensely popular. They have Once and Future, which was, I mean, God, when that series started by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora, that was one of the hottest things on the shelves. Getting one of the first couple issues of that series was almost impossible. I mean, really, what am I missing? I mean, I know I'm missing at least one big ticket item from Boom Studios, but I mean, they're cranking it out. They're cranking it out. You look at Image.
Power Rangers.
Yeah, they have the Power Rangers, but I mean, there's another indie series that I feel like I'm missing.
The Al Ewing one, is that the one you're talking about?
No, I mentioned Al Ewing. Al Ewing.
Yeah. Something Is Killing the Children.
Right.
Oh, did you mention the Tom Taylor 7 Secrets?
Oh, 7 Secrets. Yeah. So like they're really picking off some really high caliber talent. I mean, Boom Studios went off in 2020. They were not playing. So, and then you look at Image, which is like just the most successful independent comic book publisher in the game. Best deal for creators, bar none, even from the mouth of creators themselves. You got, Crossover, obviously, financially successful, massive. Department of Truth, massive. Scott Snyder and Tony Daniel are about to come in with their Noctera series, which is no doubt going to blow down the walls in terms of financial success at bare minimum. Chip Zdarsky, Stillwater. Gideon Falls obviously just ended. I mean, I'm sure there's at least a dozen other series that y'all can mention that people are going.
Country Saga is supposed to be coming back this year. Die from Kieran Gillen and Stephanie Hans.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Spawn is selling as well as it ever has. One of the first books that ever came out.
Let's also talk about everything that Ed Brubaker is doing. Pope and Reckless selling like freaking gangbusters and being some of the best comics that have come out in the last couple years. I mean, Jesus, indie is firing off. And somebody said in the chat something about like this being the end of comics. You're hella wrong, dog. I mean, I'm not gonna put you on blast and like highlight your thing. That doesn't mean it's the death of comics just because DC's shit in the bed. DC's done it before. Marvel's done it before. If anything, I think this is going to be a banner period for indie comics, and not in a way of like, not necessarily, maybe not as financially successful as the 90s image boom was. But shit, man, financially, you're starting to see these things go off. They're getting adapted to film, to television, through all of these different streaming services. So there's an incentive for creators to put out independent content that they own the licenses to, right? Aside from the fact that, let's be real, quality wise, indie comics have never been better. Indie comics have never been better. I just organized my last maybe 2 or 3 months of comic books. My indie shit is just as high as my Marvel stuff and as my DC stuff, if not higher. That's never happened for me before, right? So I think they're going to continue to capitalize. I think the market, even if it's just for a period, like Jace said, the pendulum is going to shift over into indie comics. Just in terms of, I think the general consensus of fandom, maybe also financially to some terms, but to be fair, besides the fact that Marvel has the mouse behind them, they also have these really sort of cruel retailer incentives, that are ultimately kind of destructive, but they'll sell copies whether or not people pick their books off the stands. So, what goes on behind the scenes there remains to be said. But man, indie comics, like, it's where it's at. And I'm not just saying that because I put out an indie comic myself. I mean, honestly, I've been saying this for the better part of the last year and a half. There's nothing else that I feel more intrigued to read about. And frankly, I'm going to be honest, 100% honest. If indie stuff put up the same numbers that a Batman video would put up, that's all I would review. Shit, I'd change my channel name. Like, to be fair.
Here's the one thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's the one thing.
I'm sorry.
Here's the one thing about indie that you do run the risk of, right? There's always going to be a Batman monthly comic, and if you're in to a storyline for Batman or Superman or X-Men or Spider-Man or whatever, you're going to get the end of the story. That is the one thing you run the risk of with indie comics. One of my favorite indie comics of all time ended on a cliffhanger with its 22nd issue, I think, or 21st issue. And that was like, dude, that was like 7 years ago, and I'm still waiting for it to come back and finish the story.
21 down? 21 down?
No, it wasn't 21 down. Because that technically was a DC book. No, it's called Clone.
Oh.
It was from Robert Kirkman's Skybound imprint, and it was written by some TV writers. David Schulner was a creator and originally the only writer, and then he brought on a couple of his TV writing buddies. And I think that his show that he currently is the showrunner and executive producer on is called New Amsterdam on NBC, and I think it's a pretty big hit. So I know that's what he's doing now. But I got a chance through my love of Clone to meet. That was the first time I met Robert Kirkman when he threatened to sue me, and met David Schulner and a bunch of those guys. And yeah, I still bug David whenever I see him, or I'll shoot him a text once in a while. Dude, Clone, like what's? And in fact, he actually got a movie deal. He had a movie deal for Clone. It was in development. And then you know what happened? Orphan Black hit on the BBC, and it was too similar in concept. So the movie studio passed.
And Clone is such a better storyline than Orphan Black. Way better story. I have that entire series, Clone. I love that. And it's way better than Orphan Black.
So good. It's so good. And so the reasons, I guess I should clarify about Kirkman threatening to sue me. So I loved the series so much that I had some, my buddy works at a print, he runs a print shop, and they make t-shirts and such. So the first time I was going to San Diego where David Schulner was going to be there, I think Clone at the time was up to issue like 14 or so. And so my buddy made some Clone t-shirts, and it's had the Clone logo on it. And then underneath it said, "Are you an original?" Because I was kind of thinking of a tagline. The series didn't have a tagline, but there's one point where the guy that created the Clone program was checking everybody with a UV light to see who the original was, because they all had these ultraviolet tattoos on, so he could tell who the original was. And so I made these shirts, right? So I'm wearing it around the convention. I think it was like a first day on a Thursday, and I went walking by the Skybound booth a couple times. And then I wore it just the next day too, but just in the morning because I was going to the Skybound panel. And so I'm sitting in the audience. I got my Clone shirt on. David Schulner's on the panel Robert Kirkman's up there on the panel, and Sean Mankiewicz was the editor-in-chief at Skybound at the time. And he does his spiel, and then he says, before I get into this, I want to call out something. I saw this guy yesterday wearing a clone shirt, and he went walking by, and the shirt looked so good, and I thought to myself, man, those clone shirts we made are really, really good. And then I realized I didn't make clone shirts. And so he goes, but I see him sitting out there in the audience. Can you stand up, please? So I stand up, and I show everybody the clone shirt, and I'm like, yeah, my buddy made these for me. And Kirkman looks at me like dead, straight face, goes, yeah, my lawyers will be in touch. And I knew I wasn't really in trouble because it was just for personal use. I wasn't selling them. I didn't make a bunch of them or whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing really on there that, that was trademarked or anything. So I sat back down, and he looks at me and he goes, I kind of like sat back in my chair, and he goes, he kept doing that throughout the panel. He would catch my eye and go, and so then ever since then, whenever I see Kirkman, he always remembers me because I was the guy with the clone shirt that he was gonna sue. And I made a couple. I didn't just make one for myself. I made one for Schulner and for his wife and for his 2 sons and everything, and gave them to him and everything. So yeah, that's so clone. It'll always have a special place in my heart. It's just such a good story too, and man, I would love it.
It's cool.
Back. But that's the risk you take with independent comics. It could go away. Most of the time, sales driven. You could love it, but unfortunately, having one reader who loves it isn't enough to keep a book afloat.
Yeah, I hear that completely. And that's one of the things that I really like about independent comics. It's because, it can be really hit or miss depending on the type of story that you're attempting to tell and stuff like that. But a lot of times, especially nowadays, I do find that indie comics primarily are a lot more hit these days and stuff like that. I know we were talking about Boom Studios and stuff like that. When it comes to some of the titles that they're taking out, whether it's one of the newer titles like, say, Dead Day under Ryan Parrott, which I'm really enjoying, or even one of the older books like, say, Irredeemable, which I'm currently going through as well. I really like a lot of these concepts that, independent creators are coming up with. And of course, I'm going to mention Trevor's book because, that was just a really good book, with that first issue and stuff. And I'm really excited for that second issue, especially with the things that he's been telling me and whatnot.
Yeah.
And of course, I do got to mention, logo designer, right here. But, it's really interesting just to kind of see what some of these creators are able to come up with when they're not, like, say, under the direction of, like, one of their big time editors, like, say, with the big 2, where even though they're able to tell their stories and stuff like that, they still have to respect the continuity and stuff that's laid out for them and whatnot. I really like what some of the stuff that indie creators are able to come up with and stuff. And man, I forgot where I was going with this.
It's okay, Joey. We still love you, buddy.
I actually, there was something that was said prior to that I was like, oh man, I really want to comment on that, but I cannot remember exactly what it was. Oh yeah, we're, it's one of those things where the big 2 will always be around. Marvel and DC will always be Marvel and DC and stuff like that. But considering the amount of indie books that I especially look at nowadays, as opposed to the big 2, I find myself looking and reading a lot more indie books, just because I like, I like the areas that they go to and some of the ideas they end up exploring and stuff within the context of a lot of their books and stuff. That's it. Okay, I'm muting again.
you had a good streak there, pal. Give you credit where credit's due. Also,
I am
thanks
trying my best here. I will say that I am officially gone, and this is all I have left.
I thought you were certified gone like an hour ago, pal.
Oh yeah, no, I was definitely certified Conan an hour ago, but I'm about to finish the last, and then I'm switching to water because it's all I literally have left in my life in terms of beverages.
It's okay.
We
won't fault you, pal. Yeah, I appreciate the shout out. I'd actually probably be remiss if I didn't try to sell my book because I'm fucking horrible at selling my book. Also, thanks to Aaron VO. If Drunk Trev wants to talk about indie stuff, I've recently read this great comic called Area 51, the Helix Project. Ever heard of it? I have. Fortunately, it is just so happens to be on my sweater, on my background, and also on Jace's chest at the moment. Coming to a chest near you if you have fashion sense, gentlemen. So feel free to click that big bad link in the description. But if you want a cool new sci-fi comic that is gonna rock your world, Area 51, the Helix Project is out now, right now. The first issue on a really sexy, really thick paper stock. I know. I mean, I know. Jace's kind of came in a little bit beat shape thanks to USPS. But I mean, feeling them, Jace, I have to get a little bit of your testimonial. Physically, I imagine. Well, how did you feel about the product, the physical product of the book? You're muted.
There we go. No, I thought it was great. And that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about what crap Future State is. It isn't just the quality of the stories. I mean, the cover stock is the same paperweight as the interiors. It's just so. But yeah, that's the cool thing about, when these creators do their own Kickstarter, and Trevor's no exception to that, getting to have a physical book that feels like it has weight to it, a nice cover stock, and, quality, and the paper is good. And so the colors are true to what the artists intend. So yeah, I just finally, now that all the Christmas decorations went around, I rearranged a couple things in my studio today, and the books are up here behind my TV on top of all my drawer boxes here.
Sick.
And the two Area 51 books are like at the bottom of a giant stack of comics that I need to put away.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I'm pressing them as best I can. We'll see how they come out.
I'm still waiting to receive mine, Trev.
I know.
I'm waiting to do my review. I'd like to have the physical copy in my hands before I actually do my review.
I did my review prior to, because I got the digital copy and stuff like that.
I have that as well. Yes.
Check out my channel for sure. For a review on Trevor's comic book with the alien guy and stuff, and it's awesome. It's awesome, dude. Like, I mean, you made a comic book. Like, that is such a good accomplishment in terms of people who talk about comic books and stuff like that. I mean, you literally put your money where your mouth is in terms of the development and production of your comic book and stuff like that. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell people to definitely check it out. For sure. I can't feel my hands anymore, and I am literally out. So at the very end of that, I may end up passing out in the next few minutes. So if I do, make sure to take me out of the stream, please. All I have left is water. It's in this bottle. I don't know if you can tell, but the bottle is red. And it's a good bottle. I've had it for a few years and stuff, and stuff like that.
Tell us about your bottle, Joe.
Okay, so it's a red bottle, and it says Wounded Warrior Project and stuff like that. And it's a great bottle. Like, here, watch the, like, if you actually watch, it's actually really interesting. Okay. You can take the top off of the water bottle, and you can drink the water.
How
It's amazing. I really look forward to watching this stream a little bit later after I'm sobered up.
If you guys, for those watching, for those of you who want to watch another person mental state devolve into a state of madness, you can also watch the Joker movie as well, or you can tune in and watch. What are you? I think you're on your second or third drink, Joey. I mean, when you told me,
I drank it bottles of the Smirnoff Ice, plus a couple shots of whiskey prior to, like the tiny little airplane bottles.
Joey, you told me, you specifically said that it doesn't take much to that you generally get inebriated very quickly, and
Yes,
I respect you for bravely coming and showing beyond any shadow of a doubt that is absolutely correct.
Yes, I tell people all the time. My like even Trevor earlier, like when we were talking on Facebook, said maybe you should have like a small drink just to kind of get that buzz going. And I told him, I'm like, thank you for assuming my level of tolerance in terms of the whole thing as in terms of drinking stuff like that. I only drink 1 day a year, which means I have very little tolerance to alcoholic beverages, as smart as some people might say beverages in terms of drinks, and this thing says Alaska on it. I used it to pop the bottle off the top, and I can tell you, all three of you probably drink a lot more than I do, because you all seem very with it. Well, I am just completely gone within the context of this stream as a whole. And I do want to say thank you guys for talking to me, because I feel very great about that, because I don't have many friends and stuff, especially ones that read comic books. Hey, I just say I appreciate you guys a lot.
You got to read manga. You're in Japan. You got to read manga and anime, right? Isn't that what they have in Japan?
You'll have more friends that you know what to do with before you know it.
I read a lot.
Please stop talking.
Okay.
Happy wife, happy life, Joey. Remember that.
That's great.
So let me ask you, Joey, how long did it take you to read manga comics before you figured out that you got to read it backwards?
You're muted.
I was just waiting.
I would say it took me almost immediately, because it literally says read it backwards when you first open the page.
I
mean, literally, you open up a manga from the back, it says, "You're reading this wrong. Stop it."
I think it would have been funny if you were like, you read manga backwards.
Yeah, right. No, I for some reason I didn't. The first time I read manga, it was not. It wasn't. I mean, I kind of figured it read one way, because it's like the cover is literally on the other side of the book. So I was like, start where the cover is. It just kind of seemed like the obvious way to go when reading the stories and stuff like that. I don't know if the conversation is moving towards manga versus comic books in terms of a discussion and stuff like that. But yeah, manga's dope. It's really good when compared to, because I will say there are times where you look at interviews on like comic creators when they say it's kind of like it's really hard to come up with certain stories because it's like everything's been done. But manga, it's like takes those ideas and it's like, let's do something different with them. Yes, I feel your virtual hug right now, Mark. It's amazing. I hug you back and stuff. And again, I look forward to watching this later as I'm.
Well, Joey, let me ask you, Joey, let me ask you before you pass out. I'm curious. What could DC or Marvel Comics, what could the big two learn from manga? Is there something that the current North American comic book industry could learn from manga? Because you know what, the manga comic books, they sell better. It's something that very few people talk about. But I mean, if you look at the book scan numbers, manga still sells better than North American comic books in general. What's the appeal of manga, and what do you think the North American market could learn from it?
Well, I mean, you look at manga sales versus comic books versus Western comic book sales and stuff like that. And there's, I mean, I've said a long time. There's definitely a lot that that Western comics can learn from manga. For one, you look at the content and the price of manga versus the content and the price versus Western comic books and stuff like that. I mean, whether it's Marvel or DC, usually the line is drawn anywhere between $3.99 and $4.99. Versus manga, where you have the line drawn anywhere between $9.99 and $12.99 and stuff like that. And you look at the content that you get between the two, where manga is like generally over 100 pages of art versus Western comic books, which is usually about anywhere from 20 to 22 pages and stuff. So I mean, it makes sense that people would flock a little bit more towards manga, and just in terms of wanting that bang for your buck, where you're getting a more thick experience and story versus the more standardized comic book where you have to kind of stick with it for a few months to get that overarching idea about about the main story and stuff like that. So I mean, in that in itself, I mean, at times I too prefer manga and stuff like that, especially when I recently had gone through and even done one video on, but am looking to do another video on the Batman and the Justice League manga that had happened about a year or so ago, a couple years ago, and stuff like that. Where you get this, it's a story that is stretched across 3 volumes, but with the amount of content that's given per volume, it's it's almost the same as getting an original graphic novel or full trade paperback for almost cheaper than the price of that graphic novel or that original graphic novel or trade paperback. I don't know if that's making any sense right now.
I guess my comment would be though is I don't know how to reconcile the manga market and the comic book North American market, because frankly, I've been in the comic shop. I'm very good friends with my comic book retailer, and he tells me all the time. I've seen he's got a teenage girl market. He's got teenage girls that come in religiously. He's got as many pull lists for teenage girls for manga as he does for the standard comic books. It's as simple as that. And yet they have no interest in a Marvel book or a DC comic book. None. And yet DC or Marvel, DC more than Marvel has experimented with different formats over the years, but they've never, I don't know why Marvel and DC, why don't they duplicate exactly the manga format? If manga is so successful,
it won't work here.
Baffles me, and maybe Jace, you have more comments.
I would say I don't think that it wouldn't work here, because obviously if manga's selling, if DC or Marvel did attempt to duplicate that, like for example with the Batman and the Justice League, I mean, I'm not sure how sales on that particular book did, but I think it would work here very, very well, which I think we've even had that conversation before. I know I've talked with Dark Knight and Comic Boom in detail about the potential of even the comic book industry evolving past the single floppies and moving more towards the original graphic novel section, where we've talked about, like, I mean, Zenscope has said that they're moving more towards the original graphic novel area, where they're wanting to give more complete stories. And there was another company that Trevor had mentioned that is doing something very similar. What company was that, Trevor? Do you remember off the top of your head?
TKO present.
Yes. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, like, first of all, TKO, I mean, their publishing model is something that I've found a high preference for. So what they're doing is, rather than publishing the issue by issue or monthly periodicals, they're giving you the option to buy full story arcs. And whether or not you want to buy them as premium quality, like thick paper stock floppies, or you want the trade, you can buy a full story as one complete package, and even the singular issues. I just, as a floppy guy wanting to get all of those varying covers and whatnot, I buy the singular issue counts, but you get all 6 at once. It comes in a box that in a little display box that you can put on the shelf. And again, I mean, the 2 books that I have, I mean, both of them are Eisner candidates. One of them, I think, won an Eisner, Sentient by Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Walta. The other being Sarah by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting with colors by Elizabeth Breitweiser. I mean, they're getting some pretty top-notch talent based on those 2 books alone. The print quality is spectacular. The presentation is incredible. You get a digestible story. You know, I mean, for those of you that are like OG DKN viewers, you know, I had a debate a couple years ago with an old pal of mine about the single issue versus the graphic novel, and I argued for the single issue, and I ended up winning the debate. 2 years down the line, I actually prefer publishing for the graphic novel. If you said Floppy's End today, companies publish quarterly graphic novels for these books, I'd be 100% for it. I mean, based sheerly on what Ed Brubaker has been speaking about in interviews about the work he's been doing with Sean Phillips. This past year, they put out 2 of the best stories they've ever done. Both of them have been able to put out more content than they've ever done because they're not dealing with insignificant incremental checkpoints, right, in the creative process. And it's all the better for it. They're seeing ridiculous sales. Their margin of sales is much higher, right? They're literally making more money per physical product, not only in dollar per dollar value, but in percentage. It's a win-win situation, and the reader gets a digestible story. Whether or not you want to continue that narrative in some long-form stretch, that's cool. But what we're getting exposed to is entirely, you know, I mean, you're getting something that's digestible, something that you don't feel bogged down by on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, and so the question I'd like to pose to you then is, like, it sounds like there's an obvious market for something like that. Do you think Marvel and DC could actually learn from a business model like that?
I don't think it works for them, and I'll tell you why. It's a couple of things, right? So we're talking about, hey, can this model work for Marvel and DC? It works for manga. Can it work for Marvel and DC? Okay. Realize when we say manga, that is a huge swath of genres, right? That's like saying if it works for manga, it can work for Western comics. It could work for Western comics, but that's different than saying it could work for Marvel or DC. Marvel and DC, as we all know, is 99.9% superhero comics. So manga, when you talk about it, and this is the thing about manga and why, you know, to Boom's point about his retailer having all these pull lists for these teenage girls. So we used to do Webtoon Wednesdays, which Webtoon is a free platform. Anybody can, you know, put a comic up there. It's a digital. And the vast majority of creators on that are actually female. The vast majority of creators are female. And it's a lot of romance and horror and all these other genres that you don't necessarily see. When you talk about Marvel and DC, you're talking about superheroes. When you talk about manga, you're talking about stories about boxing, stories about soccer or football, you know, if you want to use the world that, or the term that everybody in the world except for the United States uses. But you're talking about a lot of, I don't know the term. I know there is an Asian term or a Japanese term for the actual romance portion. You're talking about all these different genres and superheroes in terms of percentage of what percentage of manga comics are superheroes. It's actually very, very small. So when you talk about what can work for manga and what can work for superheroes, you're comparing apples and oranges. The other aspect is it's a societal aspect. So for whatever reason, manga and visual storytelling in Asia has always been an accepted hobby, an accepted thing that people do. People read, and it was just as valid to read a prose novel versus reading a graphic novel or, you know, sequential storytelling or manga or comics. Whereas over here on the Western side of things, as Boom and I can attest to, until they became the pillar of pop culture with all these movies, comics were sort of an underground thing, and there still is a stigma. So, you know, we have fewer people reading these days than ever, and that's probably this, you know, just as valid in Asia or in the East as it is here in the West. But in terms of that stigma still hanging around, you know, I know in Japan, you'll go on the subway and people are just reading their manga, whether it's on their phone or their tablet or an actual physical copy. You just don't see that. Reading, it's not happening here. So while it's a great idea, and I'm sure that DC or Marvel, any of them would be happy numbers. Like when you look at the number one selling manga each month in Japan, it sells like 9 million copies. Those numbers here in comics haven't been seen since the late 50s, early 60s. It just doesn't happen. So it's a great idea, but I think even changing up the format, you know, going to the quarterly model, you're just not going to see those numbers. In fact, I just saw the sell-through numbers for Doug Pickley, I think that's how you say it, or Pilkey or whatever, the guy that does the Dogman books anyway. His last Dogman book that just came out in November or December, it sold 1.25 million copies in its first like 2 or 3 weeks, which is great. But and any comic publisher would love to have something they publish. My daughter, she's 9 years old. She loves the Dogman books, you know. So it's not that the appetite is not there. It's not that comics can't work, and telling a longer form story like that still can work. But if you're talking about comparing it to manga, where, you know, a monthly manga trade or whatever they want to call it sells 9 million copies, we're over here, you know, bragging and doing backflips over 1.25 million, not even 25% of what the, you know, biggest selling manga each month in Japan does. So, you know, I know it's a great thing to think about, but really we're comparing apples and oranges because there's so many different factors. You know, there's genre factors, there's societal factors, there's cultural factors beyond just the format factors. So it's a great thing to think about. And hey, I would be happy to have some 9 million copies here in the US, but I just don't see it.
I would say this. So you're saying that the comic book industry as a whole, like, are you saying there is no way in the future it could benefit from potentially releasing full stories, kind of like manga, not so much in the same way that manga does, but more so in the fact of just releasing the full story rather than in single issues that the comic book industry could benefit from?
No, the comic book, the Western industry could benefit from different full story. You know, whether you're releasing it in full format or, you know, here's the equivalent of, you know, 40 issues, and we're going to release it quarterly, and you're going to get a 10-issue chunk, a 10-issue chunk, and a 10-issue chunk. It could benefit from that. But if you're asking me if Marvel and DC can specifically benefit from that format, I would say I don't see it happening. And the biggest part of that would be manga stories, for the most part, have a beginning and an end. Marvel and DC, they're never going to stop making Superman stories. They're never going to stop making Batman stories. There isn't an end. It goes on forever. In their mind, they're printing money. So that's the thing that manga has the benefit of how they can take advantage of the format. They can put out a book quarterly that's the equivalent of 30 to 40 issues, and divide that content up into 4 quarterly pieces that are in a phone book or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the term is, trade paperback, but you know, there's those real thick anthologies that manga puts out, and you say, okay, the story's going to be this many pages, and we're going to put it out quarterly, which means, you know, 400 pages. It's going to be 100 pages each in each quarter, right? Because we're telling one story, and it starts and it ends, and it's all coming out this year. You can't do that with superhero comics because they never end. They never end. That's part of what makes it apples and oranges. You're comparing two things that are totally different.
I don't know. I mean, to that, I would kind of argue the fact that, yes, superheroes in terms of the genre doesn't end, but stories themselves definitely do end in terms of like the more specific kind of stories that you want to tell, like the Flash versus there was a Reverse Flash. There's definitely a main story there that they can tell and then move on to the next one, stuff like that. And I don't know, in that kind of factor, I would think that the main comic book industry could definitely take some of its cues from not just manga itself, but also from the broader aspect of releasing these more streamlined stories that wants to tell one specific story, and then it moves on to the next, almost as if it was serialized to some degree. And then with it, kind of to that effect too, I kind of do want to ask, DKN and Boom, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
In terms of what, like the trade, like bringing this into like a more segmented release schedule.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard to tell, because I think a lot of the time graphic novel sales can actually save monthly comics. I mean, you saw that being very much the case from what I understand with like Tom King's Omega Men. Monthly, that book was selling horribly. I think at the time it was DC Comics' lowest selling periodical book. And when you move on into the trade sales, you started seeing some pretty immense success as word of mouth carried itself away. So, I still feel like there is a big market, because most of the time, I think the reason why monthly comics don't always succeed as independent parts of a story are because most of these stories are being written for the trade anyways. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel like the next logical step is just publishing for the trade. Like, why don't we cut out the middle, the sort of these middle steps? It's very clear based on a number of different sources. I mean, we can use Brubaker and Phillips as an example, that constantly cutting off the creative process at these weird checkpoints is not doing them any good. In fact, taking those away have done nothing but benefit them creatively, in terms of the quality, the output, and the physical product. So, I feel like it's feasible, to just go straight to trade publishing and maybe making like a monthly installment go direct to digital. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, there's something too for just learned behavior. Like, this is what in Western comics, this is what we're used to. So you would have to endure a transition period where sales might be lower than you want them to be, or they would normally be if you weren't making the transition. And to Boom's point that he made much earlier, we know Warner Brothers ain't got no patience.
That's true.
Yeah,
I just want to quickly add that I think that there's something to be said about cultural differences here, of which there is not necessarily unification. I know we like to think that the world's getting smaller and smaller all the time, but there are still cultural differences. The fact of the matter is that I've watched videos and I've been told, and I don't have any personal experience about this, but Japanese people read manga on trains and subways, and it's prevalent. It's extremely common, apparently, to go anywhere in Japan. And I guess, Joey, you'll correct me on this, I guess, but I mean, apparently manga is very, very popular. The fact of the matter is that I would have to search. I mean, it's like trying to find Waldo here in my city to find somebody reading a comic book. Nobody reads comic books anymore, but a lot more people read manga in Japan on average than read comic books in North America. That's what I'm told. That's what I believe. I can be corrected, but the sales would suggest that is the case. Manga has unbelievable sales in comparison in Japan compared to comic books in North America. It's not even a contest. And I think maybe, and I don't know this, but I'm thinking that maybe we might be in danger of drawing a false equivalence between, well, it sells well in Japan. If we duplicate the exact format in North America, it should also sell the equivalent in sales. Well, you know what? I don't know if that's the case, because you know what? I hate manga. I really hate manga. I look at manga. First of all, it's fucking backwards. Why would I read it? Why would I want to read a goddamn book backwards? Like what sense does that make? It makes no sense. I don't want to read a book backwards, and I don't want to read it in black and white. I love art. I love the. I'm not an artist, but I love seeing it. I love it in the comic book format. I'm never going to read manga. I would never ever read manga, and I don't see myself ever doing it. Plus, every single male character is either bi or a little bit on the edge. Everyone seems to be a little bit. It disturbs me that their relationship with sexuality in manga is always off to me. It's just off. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the Japanese. I don't quite understand. Every male character seems to be very flippant in their. Everyone seems to. It's just the whole thing is off to me. And don't get me wrong. No judgment. I'm just saying the thing is off to me. Everything about it is off to me. And so, you know what? I think there's a cultural difference. And yes, I'm obviously displaying my biases and everything else and my flaws as a human being. But that's the truth. And I don't see it. I don't see manga working in North America. And that's why it's continued to fail. Because if it worked, people that are just interested in money, like AT&T, they would replace all of DC comic books with manga if everybody wanted manga. But the fact is, in North America, I don't know. I guess maybe there's an untapped market for teenage girls, but why aren't, if manga's so goddamn popular, how come the big two haven't picked up on it?
Well, I mean, to a degree, I think the big two have kind of picked up on it a bit, especially with their, YA comic book sort of style, the graphic novels that they have, things like, Gotham City High and stuff like that. There was that Green Lantern book that came out some time ago and stuff like that. So I don't want to say that it's been written off, or completely to a degree. I mean, I've even seen studies like in terms of the comic book market that manga, even in the United States and like North America in general, do have a tendency to outsell Western comic books as a whole, just because, I mean, you've got a few different things in that factor. I mean, one, you've got page count versus price. You've got a $9.99 to $12.99 book with over 100 pages. Yes, black and white, but versus a Western style comic book of 22 to 20 pages, which generally is far less. So you figure with manga, you do get a little more bang for your buck in the long run and stuff like that. Yeah, I kind of see you, Trevor, there. And then, God, what the fuck am I saying right now?
Sorry if I distracted you.
Also, I am extremely, extremely inebriated, as the term of the thing is coming about and stuff like that. But I do think there have been attempts to placate to the manga market in some ways with the smaller books and stuff like that. And I mean, even at my last local comic book store, manga had a tendency to outsell the Western comic books by a wide margin, in terms of people coming to the store. Yeah, there was always the group there for the comic books, but when a new manga hit, it was a lot harder to get in the long run, just because they were coming in for those books and stuff like that. And at one point, I did ask my old local comic book store, what is the general ratio between, say, manga pre-orders versus the standard Marvel, DC, or Image, like Western comic book pre-orders, and the general kind of thing to it all was that they got a lot more manga pre-orders and whatnot, So I do want to say there's definitely something that, Western comic books could probably learn from manga. What are words right now?
Well, I
1,
mean,
2, 3, 4, redfish, bluefish.
I mean, I agree with you, Joe, but I'll go back to the fact we keep saying manga, and again, that is such a giant genre, and it's not that that format here in the U.S. doesn't work. So I mentioned.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that it doesn't work. I mean, like I said, like I've seen like articles and stuff that have kind of compared the two, where manga does tend to outsell the Western comic book.
Yeah, well, to go back to what I was talking about earlier with Webtoon, right? Like, it's a lot of those same genres that really work in manga, like romance. So the number one comic, the top two comics on Webtoon are both these romance comics. Number one is this comic about Greek gods, and it's going to be adapted for a Netflix show, and it's very much that romance kind of genre. And the same thing with the number two one, which is called Let's Play, which the creator, who's been on my show several times, she's a friend, and she's great. So she ran a Kickstarter so that people could get the actual physical book, right? Mm-hmm. Run one before, she ran a second one for the second volume hardcover, and her goal was like $15,000 in order to put these out. She raised over $100,000 and again, this is in the Western market, because there is a market for that stuff here. And that kind of that, when you talk about manga, we're talking about, different genres, and clearly her style, when you look at the art style, it's in that manga style where, the eyes are a little bigger, and the facial expressions are exaggerated and whatever. So clearly there's a market for that. But when you talk about it, this basically is a romance comic that also, like, one of the characters is a video game streamer, like a Twitch, equivalent in her world that has been created. So yeah, there's a market for it here, but that's not the market that DC and Marvel are tapping into when you're talking about their superhero books.
Yeah, well, I mean, to a degree, I would even put up the slight argument that, it is possible that Marvel and DC are also looking in the wrong areas, because when you talk about Webtoons, Webtoons is definitely a lot of creator-owned manga and comic books, or manga and stuff like that, versus when you look at, say some of the more streamlined manga books, for example, My Hero Academia, which is one of the biggest mangas right now, which is very much in the superhero genre. And I don't really know anybody in the manga space that is not reading My Hero Academia, or anyone in the anime section that is not watching the show adapted from My Hero Academia, in terms of it being in the superhero genre and stuff like that. So I do definitely agree that, romance does fit in there, and there's many different genres that account towards, manga as a collective. But when you really look at, say, the shonen, which is the more male targeted / oriented manga, versus the shoujo, which is the more female oriented manga, there's definitely no denying that Shonen Jump does have a bigger market, which when you look at, say, things like My Hero Academia, which is more superhero oriented, you have Black Clover, which is also a pretty popular manga and anime that has to do more with like action and manga, or action and stuff like that, which is probably less than what females would be interested in. Jesus Christ, where the hell was I going with that? I would probably be able to go into this a little bit better if I wasn't completely plastered, but I'm seeing about 8 screens right now. So to that, I guess the whole point I guess the whole point that I'm trying to make is that if DC and Marvel paid attention to the right genres and aspects of the manga market, they could definitely indeed benefit from it.
Okay, so I'll go on right now as saying if DC gave the reins of the or actually, you know what? Create a new book, new title. Call it Bruce Wayne. Don't call it Batman. Call it Bruce Wayne. He's still Batman, but that's a very in the background kind of subplot. And what you're actually doing is telling the story of Bruce Wayne dating and his love life, and give it to somebody who writes romance well. I guarantee you it would outsell the regular James Tynion Batman book.
Well,
Yeah,
it doesn't help that James Tynion Batman is ass. But regarding like the faces I was making earlier, before I forget what I was gonna get at with those, is, I mean, I think primarily when you're looking at manga, and like full disclosure, manga was my thing before I got into Western comics. That was,
That explains it.
yeah. Thanks, pal.
Oh, shots fired.
I'm just well versed. Pinky out, you dig? Anyways, what I was getting at with that is with manga, the reason I think it's not as much bang for your buck is simply because, I mean, first of all, you only get about 3 to 4 panels a page. It's smaller. Half the time there are no backgrounds at all, if there are any. And if there are backgrounds, it's mostly just what is absolutely bare minimum to let you know that like the character is standing on something, or if they're crashing into something.
You're reading the wrong manga, man.
There's also no. I mean, I grew up reading like classic shonen manga. Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece. Like all of the super popular stuff that translated in America.
What's the boxing manga that everybody always swore by?
Oh, there's a bunch. I mean, there's Baki the Grappler, for example, which is a pretty big one. Which actually, I think it has a couple seasons on Netflix and stuff, which is really nice. Yeah, but in terms of boxing, there's actually quite a few titles.
There's no Western boxing comics.
But what I was also going to say too, in terms of like the production line of manga, is that you also have an entire studio of artists that are trained to draw exactly like the creator and manufacture the same exact art on an installment to installment basis. Half the time you don't know that you have maybe 4 different artists working on either the same manga or 4 manga installments out. So
yeah, the equivalent of
the illusion.
Say that again, Jace.
I said they work for the equivalent of a bowl of rice.
Yeah, that's also fair.
They just want the prestige of saying, I worked on X. That doesn't happen in Western comics anymore.
Well, yeah, it also doesn't hurt that Western comics don't sell like that. So the money that you're making, even off of royalties, is pennies, unless you're Bendis and everything you write is about your royalties. But hey,
Bendis is Superman. It's the greatest comic book to ever comic.
And on that, I think that's just a good sign that we're tapped for the night, boys and girls.
I lied.
I want to thank everybody for joining us live and being part of the conversation. I know it was super unorganized, but it was nice to kind of hang out, have a drink, relax, talk about comics. Some people get worked up, but hey,
I'm gone.
He is out there. I also obviously want to very much thank my co-hosts for joining me tonight. And actually, I wanted to bring it up. We did have a very generous tip from one of our regular viewers in the show that I want to address before we tap out for the night. The incredible, always present Aaron VO just says, been a shit week. Needed this ethanol fueled ridiculousness. Cheers, boys. Cheers to you, man. I hope you have a wonderful start to your weekend. And thank you so much for just being an active part of the show and contributing. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And again, back to my co-host, of course, to my immediate left. Yes. Or my right. Yes. So your right, my left is the one and only Comic Boom. Pal, do you want to let the folks know at home what you have coming up this week?
I'm gonna be sharing my my comments with Dark Knight and Jace. You guys we'll be talking on Jace's channel, Comic Source, this podcast on week 3 of Future State. So check in for that. And I'll be doing some random reviews on my channel. And yeah, and just a shout out to Mark McKeever and Tevya and Aaron Vo and all the other guys in the chat and Ash on Comics. Thanks for showing up and giving your comments. And yeah, thanks for showing up, guys. And I always remember it's Friday night. There's no reason not to have a drink.
Good point. Good point. Joe, what do you got coming up, pal? What do the folks at home need to know about?
Oh, well, first I want to say, definitely thank you for hosting this whole thing. Thank you for everybody in the chats and stuff. I think, this was a very interesting conversation. I definitely look forward to watching it sometime later after I've sobered up because of my very low tolerance to alcoholic beverages. I'm pretty sure that I made very little sense at a lot of times, and I'm not sure if I got my point across between any of the conversations, but I definitely have, if you haven't been on my channel already, I've done a couple of videos on Future State, as well as the recent trailer to the Superman and Lois TV series that I just recently released yesterday. That's what words are. Oh my God, it's great. As well as I do have a pretty big video coming up where I'm going to start covering the New 52 Flash, which I'm really excited about. I know you and I, Dark Knight, have talked a little bit about that already, as that was your first Flash book that you had ever written. This is the Flash book by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, which I'm really excited about that video coming up as well. And that's going to be like the next big video that I'm going to be focusing on. And I do want to also say that, again, thanks for having me on, and stuff like that in terms of just putting this whole thing together. And yeah, dude, it's great. Definitely go check out my channel if you haven't already. And let's, move on to Jace, the comic source. It was a pleasure, man. I'm glad I finally had a chance to actually talk with you a little bit.
Yeah, great to meet you virtually, Joe. And yeah, I'll echo your sentiments about the New 52 Flash. I know Francis. I know Booch Kitty, as I call him. I'll have to tell you guys that story at another time, how he got that nickname. It's a good one. And it also involves a T-shirt, although I wasn't being threatened by legal action on that one. But it's a good story. Good story nonetheless. On the Comic Source earlier today, we released our normal Spotlight Friday episode, which focused on Wonder Twins #2, The Grim Knight #1, which Batman Punisher, which didn't really work for us as well as you might think. And we talk about the core values of Bruce and how it doesn't really reconcile. And also Hawkman #10 from Robert Venditti and Brian Hitch, which sort of unlocks the big potential of Carter Hall. And then also today we released Future State Spotlight Week 2 with both Dark Knight and Comic Boom, talking about in-depth every issue by DC of Future State. We go issue by issue. And we'll be recording Week 3 later this weekend, and that'll be coming out next Friday. As far as upcoming episodes, so tomorrow in our normal Marvel chronology, we're still going through the Thanos reading order. We're going to be covering the first issue of Jim Starlin's Silver Surfer run when Thanos makes his reappearance. I also have a comic book creator content conversation. That's hard to say after drinking. Just like Boom and Dark Knight have done, they've come on the channel to talk about why they do it. Well, tomorrow I'm going to be talking to Chad Bokel of the Lantern Cast. It's a Green Lantern focused podcast. He's been doing it for 12 years. We had a great conversation earlier today about why he does it, and he's got some great stories and such. So look forward to that. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation tonight, the conversation with Kyle Higgins about Radiant Black will be coming out on Tuesday. And again, it's daily content at the Comic Source. You're going to get something every day, whether it's Marvel Monday or Superman Sunday or New Comics Wednesday. There's comic content every day. So, you don't have to listen to everything, just tune in for what you enjoy. And we're happy to have you and share our love of comics.
You guys heard it here, man. Make sure you check out all three of these gentlemen. You can find links in the description below to each of their platforms. They're all stupendously stellar at what they do and very individual. On my end, I'll probably be putting out a review this weekend. I just don't know what, because I don't want to be super pessimistic. So I was hoping to find something that I rather enjoyed to talk positively about, because Future State may or may not be burning me out like a dead candle. But
are you reading Rorschach?
No, I like good comics.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You don't. I'm trying to think of
If
what
you want good comics, you don't read Tom King.
what can you read from DC that's good? Yeah, I got nothing. If you don't want to read Tom King and you don't want to read Future State, I certainly can't recommend Batman Catwoman because that's Tom King and Strange
How
Adventures.
about the next Batman, eh?
No.
That's Future State. That's what they're putting out now. Is Future State or Tom King book?
Well, we'll figure something out. Who knows? Maybe I might have to do some sort of retroactive review.
There you go.
But I also obviously want to thank everybody in the chat for joining us, particularly, of course, the marvelous Mark McKeever, the terrific Taylor Pector. God, this is going to get difficult if I'm trying to be like illiterate. Let's see. The terrifying Tevye Smolka. The Jesus, I can't Tehillim. I'm sorry, pal. I've run out of T adjectives. I'm too many I emptied the bottle of Four Roses, buddy. But just know,
Did you use Turbo? Tell him.
the Turbo Tehillim 29. There you go. That's killer.
Yeah.
And of course, thank you guys so much for being a part of the conversation. Make sure you check out everybody and on all of our beautiful faces on our platforms, with the exception of our fair Jace, who likes to just surround you with the dulcet tones of comic books and such. But we're going to be getting on out of here, a little bit tipsy. Again, live audience.
Wow.
Thank you for your highs, thank you for your lows, and the occasional tears we've experienced tonight in the chat. So we'll catch you guys later.
See ya.